Good afternoon and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting here at Fenland. My name is Councillor David Connor and I'm chairing the Planning Committee meeting today. I'd like to welcome those members of the public and the press in attendance and those who are watching the live stream via this meeting on YouTube. Whilst the meeting is being held publicly, it is also being streamed via YouTube. Minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such a time that the minutes are produced. Please be aware that the audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream. Therefore, those invited to speak need to ensure their microphones are on when speaking and are as close to you as absolutely possible. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, can all present keep their microphones off except when invited to speak? Please ensure that the microphone is turned off when you have finished speaking. Everyone turns their mobile phones off or on silent for the duration of the meeting. Please be aware that the cameras will be on at all times during the meeting. With regard to the meeting, I must ask members of the public to refrain from interrupting. The only members of the public allowed to speak are those who are registered to do so. Anyone who speaks must do in a respectful and a polite manner. It is right there is meaningful discussion about the merits of any applications, but we will not allow inappropriate language or personal attacks on councillors and their beliefs, on members of the public or on officers' professional advice. So now we'll go to agenda number 1, and I'd like to ask member services if we have any apologies for absence. So over to you, Jo. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received this afternoon from Councillors Benny, Councillor Marks, Councillor Mrs Mayor, and substituting today for Councillor Benny is Councillor Miss Scanlon.
Yep, thank you once again, Councillor Miss Scanlon, for substituting for Councillor Benny. It's getting a really regular occurrence now, isn't it, for substituting for someone. So agenda item number 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting of the 16th of November 2022. Have I got a proposer on those? Councillor Sutton's got some discrepancy somewhere that he's found. Please, yeah. Please do, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, there's just one minor error on page 20, okay, at bullet point 3. It refers to me, and on the I lost it now. Oh, Mr. Slater raised the Bardrove site, and he is incorrect in saying that they are passed and pasted on Bardrove. That should read that is correct, not incorrect.
Okay, that's been noted. Thank you, Councillor Sutton, for bringing that to the attention of us. So, is everybody happy with that? Just that little bit of an amendment to the minutes. So, just okay. So, who would like to propose the minutes? Councillor Davis. Who would like the second? Councillor French. All those councillors in favour of the minutes being signed off? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. So we'll look to agenda item number 3, which is urgent items. There are none, but just to make the committee aware, if they aren't already, that agenda item number 6 has been withdrawn from the agenda. So we've got a slightly lower agenda today. So nip to 4 declarations of interest. Member service will now go to each councillor in turn. And can you please state if you have anything to declare in relation to any of the agenda items here this afternoon? So over to you, Jo, please.
Councillor Connor.
Yeah, I represent Doddington and Wimbledon, an FDC councillor, and but I take no part in any planning matters whatsoever. Thank you.
Councillor Cornwell.
No, Chairman, nothing. I was originally, or I did receive a phone call on item 6 in the middle of the England football game on Saturday evening, which pleased me no end. But as it's withdrawn, I don't have to declare it now.
Councillor Mrs Davis.
Yeah, I'm chairman of Wimbledon Parish Council. Although I take no part in the discussions or voting on planning applications. I am going to declare myself predetermined on agenda item number, which is it? Sorry, it's the 12. Thank you.
Can you just confirm you're taking no part in that item? Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you. Items number 11 and 8, as a member of the cabinet, I understand that these were discussed at cabinet, but I have no recollection whatsoever. I am not predetermined, and I will be taking part.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, I attend Cherish Town Council, but take no part in any of the planning matters. Also on agenda items 8 and 11, I'm on the cabinet member as well, but I'm in no way biased or predetermined, and I will judge these decisions in my normal manner with an open mind. Thank you.
Councillor Purser.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing to declare on this agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Spalding.
Nothing to declare on this agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I've got two applications I need to make a declaration on, and they are the two at Needham Mount Friday Bridge, 22/11/23 and 22/11/24. I was requested by the applicant to call these in, which I agreed to do, and I did do that, of which the chairman will be aware because I copied him into the request. It doesn't mention that on the agenda that I called it in, but I certainly did. But also on top of that, I've had two recent meetings regarding other issues with residents on Bardrove, one of which coincided with the council meeting on Monday. That's why I wasn't present. And this application was discussed on both occasions. So to keep my integrity intact and those of the applicant and the objectors, I shall not take part in those two applications, Chairman.
I can confirm that Councillor Sutton did call that in, just for the record. Thank you.
Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you very much. I declare an interest on agenda item 8. I am chairman of planning at Whittlesea Town Council. I will not take part in the vote on this item, just to reiterate the support of Whittlesea Town Council for this development.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe, for that. So now we'll go to the main part of the meeting, the planning applications. Just to remind members, if they don't already know, a proposal to grant or refuse an application should only be made when invited to do so. And if going against officer recommendation, the proposal should be accompanied by the planning reasons for doing so. So thank you. So I'll now hand over to Nikki Carter. She's the Senior Development Officer here at Fenland to present application F/YR22/1076/F, agenda item number 5. So Nikki, when you're ready, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 5 is a full application for a terrace of 3 two-storey, 2-bed dwellings set back in the site behind parking. This site has been subject of a number of applications and significant negotiation. Most recently, an application for 2 semi-detached houses and a triple garage with flat above was refused by Planning Committee in July. The application site is indicated in red on the location plan and aerial photograph. It is located in the centre of Chatteris on the southern side of King Edward Road, adjoining the conservation area and within the setting of a number of listed buildings. The former dilapidated barn has been demolished and the site cleared. King Edward Road is narrow and there are double yellow lines preventing on-street parking. Proposed site layout can be seen on this plan. The dwellings are set back behind parking spaces and therefore significantly behind the established building line on the southern side of King Edward Road. The application incorporates an area of land within the existing boundary treatments, but outside the proposed gardens. This is shown in orange and is indicated as being retained by the applicant to allow access to boundaries and other properties. Proposed elevations are detailed on this plan, and the proposed floor plans here. A proposed street scene has been submitted detailing the dwellings in relation to 1 King Edward Road to the left and the Conservative Club to the right. It should be noted that the proposal is higher than number 1, and previous schemes have been successfully negotiated to reduce the scale of frontage development. The layout of the previously approved outline planning permission is detailed here, indicating an acceptable scheme for redevelopment of the site can be achieved. This is the most comparable previously submitted scheme, which was refused and dismissed on appeal on the grounds that the loss of boundary treatment and sense of enclosure to the lane and the dominance of parking for 4 cars on the open frontage of the site would materially harm the character and appearance of the conservation area and setting of listed buildings. A comparison between that scheme and the current submission can be seen here. Photo 1 shows the western side of the site. Photo 2, the brick outbuilding and its relationship to the site. And photo 3, the side elevation of the Conservative Club viewed from the site. Photo 4 shows the site between existing buildings. Photo 5, Bramley Cottage on the opposite side of the road. And 6, the narrowness of King Edward Road and its character of boundary walls. The principle of development is supported and established, and redevelopment of the site has the potential to have a positive impact on the character of the area, subject to a suitable scheme being put forward. However, the proposal results in a parking-dominated open-fronted scheme, which would disrupt the flow of the prevailing frontage development and the sense of enclosure along King Edward Road, and introduces a scale of built form not in keeping with the area, which will materially harm the character and appearance of the conservation area and the setting of nearby listed buildings. Furthermore, there is an under provision of on-site parking. The recommendation is therefore one of refusal, as set out on page 43 of the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. We have 2 speakers on this application. First, I'd like to invite Councillor Alan Gowler from Chatteris Town Council to make his presentation to the committee. When you're seated, Mr. Gowler, you've got 5 minutes. Just to add, member services will give you a knock or a speak when you've got 30 seconds left. So
it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I hope I don't take up that much of your time. But thank you for your time, everyone, this afternoon. It's very cold outside, so I appreciate everyone coming out. So if I can start my spiel on it. Obviously, I sit on Chatteris Town Council. I came and spoke on the application that was submitted in July, or in front of planning July this year, which we also supported. From Chatteris Town Council's point of view, this is a derelict piece of land that has been horribly abused by youngsters in the town. I think the applicant has told us before that he's cleared up a number of hypodermic needles off the site. We absolutely welcome it being developed. Obviously, the application that he's putting in doesn't meet, it appears not to meet requirements at the moment. It's struggle to understand why, particularly in relation to the parking, in that the site does offer parking. Many places within the town centre do not offer parking. So therefore, I would think it should be a bonus to the site as opposed to a detriment to the site. As I say, from a town council point of view, we really want to see this developed. We do feel it is in keeping with the local area. There are some very dilapidated buildings surrounding it that could also do with refurbishment. And I think it's a little bit unfair to compare them with a new property, which would be welcome accommodation for people of the town. Okay. That ends my application. That ends my thing. Is, do we have any questions?
Yes, that's the next thing. Thank you very much for Mr. Gallagher. Any members, any questions for Mr. Gallagher, please? Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Mr. Gallagher, and welcome to the committee again.
Thank you.
I'm sure I'm not the only member that spends quite a considerable amount of time going through applications and applications prior to the current one on this site. I find it. Let me just go again. I always look at either town or parish council comments and opinions, and wherever possible, I like to support them if I can within the realms of what we're allowed to do. As far as I could see, and particularly on FES 161138 stroke 0, the parish our parish council, but the town council was against that for a 2-bedroom, a 2-dwelling build out. And I don't understand how the parish council would be against 2 dwellings, but be in favour of 3.
So
I just can't get my head around it because
Okay.
we try our best. Just if you just hang on, Mr. Gallagher, if you just let Councillor Sutton put his point across, and you're extremely welcome to
sure.
answer.
We try our best to, to be fair and relevant. But can you understand how difficult that is for us as members when a 2-bedroom scheme is unacceptable to the town council, but a 3-dwelling scheme is acceptable? Because in my view, the 3 dwellings is worse than 2 dwellings. So I find it very difficult to be able to relate to those comments from the parish council, of which I would like to take notes of.
Okay, please answer.
yeah, so I can only really talk about the 2 applications for the site that I've seen since I've been a councillor, which was since 2019, which is the one we're currently looking at, and the one that come up earlier in the year, both of which we supported. The one earlier in the year was for 2 dwellings, which we supported, and we're now supporting it for 3. Okay, if it's been previously not supported in the past, obviously I can't comment on it because I wasn't on the council at the time that it happened. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that seems fair comment. You can't comment on what's been before you were elected. I think that's a reasonable answer to that one. Anybody else got any questions for Mr. Gallagher before we let him go? No burning desire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Now I'd like to invite Darren Smith. He's the applicant, to make his presentation to the committee. You've also got 5 minutes, and obviously Joe will let you know when you've got 30 seconds left, so you can wrap up your presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. This is a complicated piece of land, having 3 sides but 4 neighbours. It has 2 existing covenants on the land to the east, which we do own, but with the right of way for vehicular and pedestrians access to 1 King Edward's shed and 14 High Street's land. This cannot be built upon, shown in blue and green on the previous plan, without ownership of the land, shown in grey and pink. This now in part is impossible, as 1 King Edward do not wish to sell. The owner of 14 High Street's piece of land is willing to sell, shown in pink, but this further adds to the cost of construction. So in this current application is not included. It was, however, included in the previous application. The land has potential historic contamination as it was once a blacksmith's yard, and modern day contamination from hypodermic needles due to the site being used for drug misuse. The top layer of soil will have to be removed a foot deep and disposed of for the safety of construction workers, as over 70 hypodermic syringes and needles have been removed and incinerated so far. The existing building on the site was taken down by ourselves and a fence put up to prevent this from continuing. The orange area that was shown in the previous drawing will be retained, so all 4 neighbours have access to repair fences and walls without the new owners of the properties being affected by this historic confusion. My investigation into the planning applications for the site since 1998, over 34 years now, I was 12 years old in Chatteris at the time, show applications that have been made through planning on the land cannot be built on either because of covenants, the land not being owned, or by the time they get through planning, the cost viability for the plan falls to a negative. We're now the 3rd owner of this site who's about to go round in the same circle. Yes, you can build 2 units or 1 unit, but it's not financially viable. This is a 34-year-old fact, otherwise it wouldn't still be a piece of land. On previous applications, we asked our architect to mirror 180 Flip, an application that in 2006 was passed. But unfortunately, it was on covenanted land that was not owned by the previous applicant, so being unsuccessful in obtaining the extra land, it never got built. We tried, however, to use the land the other way around, to use the covenanted land as a driveway, allowing the access to 1 King Edward and 14 High Street, thus not breaking the covenants. This was refused. So the facts are in 2006, an application was passed, was it possible to build? In 2022, the same version, but the opposite way round was refused. We continue, like the previous owners, to go round in circles. We do not wish to keep coming up against the planning officer every time we make an application to try and build on this massively complicated site with covenants and restrictions. So do we go round in circles again to the 40th anniversary of this site passes, the plot being sold on again maybe? Or do we get the support to build on a site that for the last 34 years has been a blot on the landscape of the town, being used as a squat for drug misuse and dumping ground for rubbish? Please let us build 3 good quality affordable homes in and for Chatteris Town. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. Members, any questions to Mr. Smith before I have one? Councillor Miss Scanlon?
Thank you.
It may be a question that probably I'm going to ask, but carry on, please.
In 2019, permission was granted for 1 dwelling on the site. In 2022, 2-storey, 2 properties refused. Why wasn't the 1 property developed?
Okay, well, there's historic contamination, so it's going to cost £40,000 to take the foot level of the earth away from the site and have it put into landfill. It's contaminated ground.
Surely you would have to remove contaminated land, whether it's 1, 2, 3 or
Correct.
20. You would still have to. So the cost implication for that is
Yes,
for anything.
yeah, but if you're building a 4-bedroom house in the middle of a town with a pub to the back of it and a pub to the side of it, it's not going to gain enough money to actually be financially viable. And that's what keeps happening to this site. It gets things passed, you go to then build the house, you put the cost to it, and before you'd be back to square one again.
Yeah, anybody else got any burning desires? Councillor French?
Thank you, Chairman. I wouldn't say the burning, but I'll ask it anyway. Cambridge County Council Archaeology, have any works been done on the recommendations of what they've said? Because obviously it's a very historic site.
Yeah, we have a problem there because we have a safety issue. So until we've taken the earth away that has got the hypodermic needles removed, like I say, I personally with another chap went in and removed them and got them incinerated. But number 1 King Edward, while they were doing their renovations, found some more. So we completely shut the area off, but there will have to be a foot dug around the entire site to remove this contamination. It's too much of a risk for anyone to go digging through there with their hands, that is for sure.
I've got one now. I think I'll come in there. Right. So you said you keep going round in circles, and I can see why how that is the case. But what you do? Let's go back again. Let's rephrase that. So do you liaise with the planning officers of actually what you can actually do on that site? Because I said in July, it was looked for to be refused by officers. This one is up for being refused by officers. Do you liaise with them to see actually what you can actually put on that site? And have you done since July?
Yes, yeah, I contacted Nikki and she was very helpful. She gave me some good advice. Obviously, she's doing her job, which we appreciate. It must be very difficult to be in that position. And like I say, we don't want to keep fighting against each other, but it's really down to economics. So yes, we can adhere to some of those rules, but unfortunately, when you go to do it, it economically doesn't happen. So if you imagine, my last application was trying to make use of a covenanted area piece of land. So if we enter from the east, I can't build. So if I enter from the west where I'm not allowed to build, I can use that as a driveway. But obviously then the access wasn't acceptable. So we sort of try and move to make the most of what we can do with the land. But then we either trip over on it doesn't fit into planning and or it's not financially viable. And if you look back since Mr. Law in 1998 did exactly the same thing, we're having exactly the same conversations in exactly the same way over exactly the same reasons and just go round and round. And it was Nikki that gave me the advice to go through the history of the planning. I can't believe it, you know, I didn't realise I was 12 years old when this was all going on, but it's gone round and round and round. And we're going to get to the same point because this is costing us £3,000 to £4,000 every time we do this. And to find out at the end of keep investing it will be £12,000 in by the next time. And we haven't actually done anything. That's without the cost of securing the site, demolition, buying the site, clearing the land. So it's down to economics as well as planning. And that's why this site has never been developed, because those two things they're never going to meet. So one side's got to break or the other.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Murphy, thank you.
Yeah, just a simple question, really. When you bought that land, did you know anything about what you was buying at the time? Did you know all these covenants were on it? Did you know everything was up? You couldn't buy it, you couldn't build on this, you couldn't do this. Did you know at the time when you bought it?
Yeah, we knew that there was a covenant on the front piece of land because it wasn't included in the sale originally. So Mr. Colgrave gave us the pieces of land to add to it. Our intention was obviously to try and make more of it. Number one, King Edward was actually up for sale at the time. We missed out on buying it just very briefly. And I made contact with the other owner of 14 High Street and arranged to buy the piece of land. So even though I was aware that there was problems in the beginning, my aim was to get around this, but obviously to purchase these extra pieces of land to be able to clear the site in a way that would make it possible. Obviously, I think you knew Mr. Colgrave and you knew the problems he had. Basically, I haven't run up to the same problems, but I'm running up to similar problems. So yes, I was aware, but I was obviously put things in place to try and buy the extra pieces of land, which I was successful in where Mr. Colgrave wasn't.
Yeah. Councillor Cornwall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I see one of the problem. Well, I acknowledge problems that the land ownership and the issues of covenants and so on. But I believe the planning officers are saying that because of the restrictions, you're having to use the whole of the frontage, if you like, for parking. Has any thought been given to perhaps making the current design that's presented into something like a maisonette type approach, so the parking actually becomes integrated into the actual design of the building? That way it would remove, well, if you could maintain the footprint of the plan, but perhaps hide up the vehicle, if you like, within the garage at the bottom. I mean, has any sort of developing thought been given to how you could perhaps get over the problems that the planning officers have identified there relating to parking?
Well, I think the fairest answer to that is I did have hair before I brought this building site, but yeah, I did, yeah. But yeah, many nights I've sat here with bits of paper cut out on the table trying to make it work, to obviously make it through planning, to make it work through the covenants, to make it through the neighbours, and at the end of the day, to make it make money. And really and truthfully, we're at the end now where because of the overriding costs, I mean, even archaeology that was mentioned, we're going to have to pay for that. We're going to have to make sure it's free. And unfortunately, the numbers don't stack up. So if we try and make houses that fit for the land, perfect, we can get planning, but then we can't afford to build it. And like I say, that's why I said in here, we've been through 2 housing booms in this period of time. So if it was possible to have done these with the multiple drawings and applications it's had, and really what I'm asking really is probably not whether we get this through or whether we don't today. I'm asking for some break to actually make a viable, you know, we're open to it, but it's got to be financially viable and obviously achievable. It's complicated.
Finished, Councillor Cornwall, you're happy with that? Right, so any more questions? No, Mr. Smith, no, I can't see any. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Members, moving on, questions to officers. We'll take Councillor French first and Councillor Scanlon next. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the most important question, is there any way that the officers can work a decent plan to get 2? I'm not happy with 3 because two was not, the town council were not happy with 2. Don't see how they can be happy with 3. But obviously Nikki has been working with the applicant. Is there any way something can be worked out that would make this viable? I know viability is not, the actual cost of it is really not a material consideration, but just a bit of advice from officers.
Perhaps you'd like to answer that, Nick, or
Thank you very much,
Vicky.
Chairman. As the committee knows, we're obliged to determine the application that's before us.
Absolutely.
And we can't re-engineer the development proposal on the hoof. If you've got 3 dwellings on the front, I can't see how, given the covenant constraints that have been referred to by the applicant, that you could arrive at a scheme that still delivers 3 and resolves the concerns of ourselves and indeed the appeal inspector back in the day when they considered a scheme for 2 positioned in the same place, broadly speaking, on the site. So I have to say I'm struggling in terms of
well,
being able to offer a solution that delivers 3 units and our concerns.
So it was dismissed and appeal on 2, so I fully understand what you're saying. I like Councillor Sutton, I don't understand how the town council can recommend approval on 3 when 2 was dismissed. And I know we're looking at what's in front of us today.
Yes, we mustn't be distracted at all. Councillor Scanlon, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Down King Edward Road, there's double yellow lines all the way down it to prevent parking. Well, as chairman of Fenland District Council, I attended a function at the King Edward Centre only 2 weeks ago, and that road was full of parked cars. There was no restriction. Yes, there's yellow lines there, but there are no restrictions. Has this been taken into consideration? And I noticed that county highways do highlight this, and this is one of the reasons for refusal. There is no restrictions down there. There people will park ad lib. So what's your opinion of that restricting the properties?
Through you, Chairman.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of obviously parking enforcement and enforcement of parking restrictions, that's a separate matter. Clearly, one of the reasons for refusal that's recommended to members talks about the lack of parking provision on site, which the main concern that we've got there is if people can't park on the site, then they're going to be parking on the road and potentially contributing to the sorts of problems that you appear to have witnessed the other night.
Yes.
Right, Councillor French coming back again.
Just
Thank
a
you.
comment, obviously there are double yellow lines, and as you're all aware, I'm working on civil parking enforcement, so maybe I've got an interest.
You are indeed. You are indeed. Any more questions for officers before we go into debate? No, right. Thank you very much for that. So we're in debate. Who'd want to kick this off? Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We're not here to be too concerned about the cost of building. That's not our remit. Our remit is to say whether it's the right use of the land or whether it isn't. The comment about officers helping out with applicants and agents. I've said many, many times before that this is one of the best councils with the best planning department that looks at things like that. I know of a neighbouring council where you get virtually nil help with that back and forth. Many, many times we've read in the agenda, that officers have worked with agents and applicants to bring a scheme forward to us, which is acceptable, but wasn't to start with. So I've commented on it many, many times, and that's to be applauded. I couldn't possibly support 3 dwellings on here, and I don't think 2 was right either. They had extant permission, which run out in October of this year from my delvings into the past. I would contend that had that been built out back in when it had permission, the way house prices have gone up would easily have covered any extra costs with ground or whatever. And I would be very surprised if anybody could prove any different. You know, that house, had that been built in 2019 when it had permission, albeit in outline, but it could very soon got the reserve matters, could have been built out, and you know that there would have been a profit there by now. About that, I have no doubt. You know, the way things have come up in the last 3 years was incredible, really, and certainly unsustainable. I just can't support it as it is, as much as perhaps I would like to, but and I do take on board what the applicant is saying, that it's been a bit of a merry-go-round, but we can't support something that is simply wrong. It doesn't fit anything like in that area. It's way out of keeping with it. The single dwelling, you know, I thought that looked all right and was good. And to me, you know, the site is a single dwelling site. So I can't support the application, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Davis, thank you.
I support what Councillor Sutton's saying, in as much as had the single house been built, that probably would have earned back the money for the investment. It is a single dwelling site, and really this is trying to cram, you know, a quart into a pint pot. Both speakers were at pains to mention hypodermics and syringes. It's not our job to sit here and break planning guidelines to solve antisocial behaviour. That's something completely different. I'm afraid I can't support this application.
Wise words, Councillor Davis. Anybody else want to speak on it? No. Right. The debate is finished, and officers, have you got anything to add relevant to add? Nope, no. So thank you very much for that. Right, so we'll go. I'm looking for a proposer now. Councillor Davis, what is your proposal, please?
Go with officer's recommendation.
Okay. Have we got a second of that? We'll take Councillor Sutton if you don't mind, because he did say he's been. No, that's okay. No, sorry, you did have more to say probably. So we'll just take that one. So anyway, we've got a proposal on the table to go with officer's recommendation to refuse this application. It's proposed by Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Sutton. Can we take a hands vote on that proposal, please?
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up, that application has been refused. But before we go, and before this comes in again or may come in again, could I urge the applicant to liaise to see what can be done with officers so this doesn't actually be brought back to this committee again. I mean, or if that's possible, Councillor French.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure that's our remit.
Well, it could be, they could ask for advice, Councillor French, couldn't they? Because it keeps coming back to us.
Yeah, but it's not for us.
It isn't, but you know, it's just a suggestion.
I don't think if you go down that line, it's going to be minuted and then you're setting a dangerous precedence.
Well, there we go. Well, that's my view anyway. So as I said, sorry, Councillor Davies.
Can I just reiterate councillor French's concern? I don't think it's up to officers to keep offering free advice after free advice. They're not there to do, that's not their job. It's not, it's wrong to even suggest that they should do it. They have, the applicant has had advice. And basically that advice is given willingly by the officers, but it's not something they have to do and it's really not within their remit.
Well, it would definitely stop. It would definitely stop us coming back 2 or 3 times, wouldn't it? But I take your point. So with that moving on, we'll move to agenda item 7, FYR 21/11410. Alison, if you'd like to present that when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is agenda item number 7, S/YR 21/1141/0. It's an application for the erection of up to 2 dwellings and is an outline application with all matters reserved at 45 Westfield Road, Maney. The application is before Planning Committee as it was referred by the Head of Planning on the advice of the committee chair. There are no updates to report. The slide currently on display shows the existing dwelling and its detached garage in both plan and aerial view. The proposed scheme is illustrated on the current slide. This is an outline planning application with all matters reserved, but it is clearly demonstrated that the site can accommodate the quantum of development proposed. The current slide shows the existing dwelling and associated land. The upper left-hand image shows the view from Fallow Corner Drove with the existing access to the southwest of the dwelling. The right-hand images show the site from Westfield Road taken from the access to Westwood Farm. The lower left-hand image shows the site frontage to Westfield Road. As can be noted from the officer report, it is accepted that the site could accommodate the level of development proposed when considered in terms of character and residential amenity. Subject to detailed design. However, the site is located in flood zone 3 and accordingly it is necessary to demonstrate that there are no sequentially preferable sites which could accommodate the development. In the case of this application, the sequential test has not been satisfied as there are expand consents in areas of lower flood risk within the settlement of Maney, which can accommodate the additional dwelling proposed by this application. As such, the proposal is recommended for refusal in line with both local and national policy. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. We have one speaker on this application. I'd now like to invite Ian Gowler. He's of course the agent to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks for your time this afternoon, members. This application, as Lynn described, is to replace an existing rundown house with 2 new dwellings. As members will have seen from the photos, the existing house is in poor repair and will cost a significant amount of money to renovate, hence why we're looking to redevelop this site. We propose to demolish the existing house and construct 2 new properties within a lower flood risk area within the existing site. Renovating the house would obviously not alleviate the existing flood risk to this property. The indicative site plan provided indicates 2 dwellings in a location which was recommended by the Environment Agency. The sequential test and exception test was provided earlier this year, and as the sequential test indicates that there are existing sites within Maney that are developable, obviously this would fail this test. However, This site should fall under paragraph 166 of the MPPF, as it is within the current developed area of Mainey, as described in the report. Therefore, this should fall under existing allocated land. This is also part of the local plan policy LP12 Part A, subsection A, as an infill site. Under both these policies, a sequential test would not be required, but only subject to an exception test, which was provided. This site should be classed as a windfill site, as paragraph 25 of the flood risk and coastal change guidance. This is where exemptions can be made to the sequential test, where redevelopment is proposed to give existing dwellings of an existing site. As this site is a redevelopment site within the existing built form of Mainey, this should be considered. I believe this was the basis for the properties opposite being approved by this committee in 2020. Under the emerging local plan, which is obviously in its very early days, this site also falls within the proposed development area boundary of Mainey. Under the new local plan, windfill sites would be provide 1,500 homes. Although this site only adds one, they all count. Second slide, please. Oh, and the last one, the middle side. Yeah, that one, thanks. On this slide, the Environment Agency hazard map identifies existing flood risk levels. As can be seen, locating the two dwellings in the corner of the site is the least hazard area as recommended by the Environment Agency. Also, it is in a lesser hazard area than the existing dwelling already there. In recent years, there have been dwellings approved opposite and to the northwest, both in a worse flood zone area than shown. Within the exception test we've provided, we're proposing two important items which would fall in line with the windfall guidance. These are improvements to the existing site, providing a wider community benefit. The first is to provide attenuation for the surface water from the site. At present, the existing hard paving and dwelling goes unattenuated into an existing surface water drain. Obviously, the new development would improve this situation. Secondly, we're proposing to put a footpath around the site, which would take around the corner of Fallow Corner Drive on Westfield Road. This would provide a much safer pedestrian access for people wishing to walk around this corner. As mentioned earlier, the development opposite was approved based on similar redevelopment reasons given for this site today, and this proposed site is a lower risk area. It already has an existing dwelling on the site, so we would like to ask for consistency in the application of these two exceptions being applicable. Last slide. The application is for the outline of two dwellings. The slide shows an indicative image of what the developed site could be looking like. Obviously, it's subject to a reserve matters application, but hopefully members will agree that this would be a much improved out view on the existing dwelling. Thanks again for your time.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Gowler. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Gowler, please. No, can't see anybody. Thank you very much. Members, questions to officers. Councillor Cornwall.
Thank you, Chair. When we were on the bus last week, we were asking questions about the flood risk there with that corner and the perceived visual levels that seem to disagree with what the Environment Agency was saying at the time. And we did perhaps ask for some levels, which I think we've just had an indication on figure 3 in quite a bit more detail then of the questions that we were asking. Can I ask, have officers considered the application strictly in accordance with figure 3, or has figure 3 come along subsequently?
Yeah, please answer that if you can, please. Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, the application's been considered in accordance with the MPPF advice, which is that notwithstanding whether a site is or can be demonstrated to be safe from flooding for its lifetime, is that sequentially development should be steered to areas of lowest flood risk. So if anything is within flood zone 3, it should be steered to an area to lower risk of flooding. The site is in flood zone 3.
My understanding of figure 3 shows the zone 3 bit actually in the corner that will actually be part of the new footpath, isn't it?
Through you, Chairman, the figure 3 that was displayed is the Environment Agency hazard mapping. So that illustrates what the actual flood depth would be or flood velocity. It doesn't indicate that the area is in a lower risk of flooding. So within flood zone 3, there are areas that are then have different flood depths. So if there is a flooding event, and that is what figure 3 sort of demonstrated, was the actual variance in the flood depths sort of around and across the site.
So you can be a flood zone 3 and have up to quarter of a metre of water depth, or you could have a greater depth and still be in flood zone 3. But the point is, you're still at risk of flooding. The vast majority of the site is shown on the figure that we were shown by the agent as being underwater in a flood event. Only a small corner is not affected by flood water. What's not come through, that there is actually a pale 0 to 0.25 square that covers the majority of that site. It just doesn't come through. No. But it is showing on my laptop if you want to have a look.
Thank you, Councillor Cornwall. Anybody else got any more questions for officers? No. No. Okay, thank you very much for that. So, right, so we'll go into debate now then. Who'd like to kick that one off? Councillor Murphy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I also was on that bus when we went to have a look at this, and I really am in a dilemma because we sat on the bus, we looked at it, we went around the corner, we walked around the corner, and I don't know whether it's my eyes. I know they're getting worse now, but I stood there, and all the road and all the land fell away from there and down into the open area of agricultural land. So, if I'm going to say that, I mean, you'll probably argue with me, but if that gets flooded there, Chatteris will be flooded because it goes down all the way to Chatteris from that area. It stands up. That's why I'm so with this application. I really don't know. I know which way I'm going to vote, I think now, but I just cannot understand this flood zone 3 and 2 lark, because at the end of the day, I don't think my eyes deceive me. It run away from there. You've got all new properties built on there. Why did they get built on there? Because they would definitely be on the same height as what this one's going to be. They got built, no problems whatsoever. So why is this one not being built? I can't see any reason why it shouldn't be built.
Okay, I'm going to bring Nick in here, Nick Harding.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, Chairman. That's the one, yeah. So this slide shows exactly the point you were making, Councillor Murphy, in that If the land falls away to the left-hand side, that's where you get the deeper water, but it doesn't stop the application site for being at flood risk up to a depth of 1/4 metre. So the water isn't as deep, but it still has water on it, and that's makes it still in flood zone 3. And it's about flood zone 3 is about the frequency of flood events, not depth. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you like to come back, Councillor?
Yeah, I just would like to come back on that because, I mean, to me, that that just sounds ridiculous, to be perfectly honest with you. And if that's going to happen, the people that live in there already in those new houses in there want to open their front doors and back doors so it runs through, because it will run down that road, and it will run down. It won't stop there where that building is going to be. It won't stop there at all. It won't flood there. It was way above the height of the road and going out into the countryside.
Yeah, I do tend to have to agree with you, Councillor Murphy, but anyway, still debate. Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You know, I understand why the officers have recommended this, that they have no choice, because that is, you know, that is what's in the textbooks. I do think this is slightly different because it's replacing a dwelling which actually is in the deepest potential flooding on the site. I don't like the layout. I don't like the 2-story. I would prefer to see single story with perhaps some escape route into the roof space. But you know, you've heard me very often say about being consistent, and I think to be consistent, we have to overturn offers as much as sometimes we regret doing that. We agreed for the dwellings the other side. The one that's already built, I think, was done under delegated powers, if my memory serves me correctly. And of course, the one the other side of the road was also in flood risk 3, and we agreed that we thought that should go ahead because of the benefits to the business owner. So I think it will be difficult for us as members to go with the officer's recommendation on this one, given that we went against them on the opposite side of the road. It wouldn't be consistent. And I think we can do that because it's not an open piece of land. If it was an open piece of land, that probably would steer me in a different direction. But given that there's already a building there, which actually is a bloody eyesore, and totally out of keeping with the rest of the newer buildings around it. So I think, you know, perhaps we should allow it to go ahead with a bit of a steer that we would prefer to, or I personally would prefer to see bungalows on there rather than 2-story, because I don't think that is quite keeping with the surrounding bungalows. And indeed, reading the comments from local residents, they would prefer to see bungalows to stop any overlooking. So I think I could go against officer's recommendation on this one, given that it's a replacement rather than a straight open field. Thank you, Chairman.
Once again, I'm Chairman, so I'm going to let Nick come in here to.
Yeah, very briefly, Chairman. If this was an application for one dwelling to replace the existing, you would not have a reason for refusal that cited flood risk. Because the problem, if you're replacing one with one, the problem's not getting any worse. It's the fact that we've got that second dwelling. It is the issue. Thank you, Chairman.
We can perhaps thank you for that. So we've got Councillor Cornwall, then Councillor Miscameron. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I like Councillor Murphy. You know, I have a major dilemma here because I can see where the officers are coming from. I think practically when one looks at the site, as we were doing when we went on the visit, plus I lived less than half a mile away there for many years, and I have to say that I think there's levels there not quite tying up somewhere. But approval was given for those opposite. I think I can see the arguments for building a house, because yes, if there is a perceived flood risk, then there's an escape pattern upstairs, access upstairs and so on. I think the other point is, and this is not to be overlooked, I think the other thing is the gain of the footpath and the safety elements where the road comes out onto the Westfield Road and the Chatteris Road. At the moment, it's a completely blind corner there. It is totally blind. The plot size goes right into the edge of the plot, and this one at least provides that footpath, so you've got more visibility. So I think that's a sort of a gain within things. The main plot, I think, was, what was it, a 0.25 meter risk. If water arrives at that point at 0.25 of a meter high, I wonder if anybody's estimated how much water is flooded. Because believe me, you know, most of the Isle of Ely would disappear, I think, on that basis. So the actual physical amount of water over such a long, that side, the other side of the road, is still higher than the fen beyond it. So I mean, this is quite apparent when you actually go and look at it. In all my years around there, I've never seen any water on that field anyway, but that's another story. That's not a proof issue at all. And I think under the circumstances, because we allowed them their development across the road, and there's a net gain here on other bits and pieces, including safety on that corner and all the rest of it, I think under these circumstances, they outweigh the small amount of flood risk that there is on that particular site, and I would go against officer's recommendation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Cornwall. We've got Councillor Miscannon now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Before we all get bogged down in the mathematics of the depth of water, quarter of a metre isn't that much, and we all know it's quite considerable, about 9 inches in real terms. We had this issue with flood zone 3 at Chatteris, at Wisbeach, when the houses were built over the back of the boathouse. They got over it by building them 300 millimetres higher. If you build this 300 millimetres higher, and when the application comes in, you actually mitigate the need for flood zone, because you build over what the projected flood zone is going to be, because it's 0.25 of a metre. So I actually don't see any issues with this, providing within the application that comes forward when it's reserved matters, that the flood risk is mitigated in the building of the buildings, and that can be done. And it's been done at Wisbeach and it's been done elsewhere, and I think that should be taken into consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Miscannon. Councillor Davis.
This is an awkward one because of the committee overturn on the property opposite, and of the others were, I think the others around there may have just been before the last local plan, so they probably don't come into it, but it's the one across the road that has the impact. I think you all know my opinion about sequential tests, and I don't think it's for agents to actually say, well, I won't bother to do one because it's not gonna benefit me. And I think we do need to be careful of actually setting a precedent. Having said that, I find it difficult, as Councillor Cornwall said, when we're on the bus and you're sitting there and you can see that you are clearly higher than any other part that you're looking at. So whilst I worry about agents not applying for sequential testing and not abiding by necessarily all the rules of the game, in this case, I think I would actually support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Would you like to?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just to reiterate something that I mentioned before, is that the issue of flood risk is not about the depth of water, it's the fact that you've got water. So that's the thing to bear in mind. And in terms of the point raised by Councillor Miscannon, you're not allowed to consider the mitigation until such time as the sequential test has been passed. Because if you focus your attention first on the mitigation, then the mitigation is 99% of the time capable of resolving the problem. But that undermines the whole point of government policy, which is to avoid building in flood risk areas in the first place. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
We can go back to officers for summing up in a very few minutes after debate. Councillor French.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question. I mean, we've got this planning application later on in another application. We've got another application which is in flood zone 3 and recommended to be approved.
Through you, Chairman, that's because the sequential test has been gone through and no sites at lesser flood risk have demonstrably been found, and therefore in accordance with government policy, your own local plan policy, and indeed supplementary planning policy, that's how we arrived at that recommendation.
Right.
Thank you very much. Myself, these two dwellings look fantastic. And when you come into the village, it would look better than what's there now. And like I said, I was fortunate. I sat next to this man who has lived in that area, and he said he's never seen that flooded in all this lifetime. That was a long time. So
There's a backhanded compliment if I ever did hear one.
But so I'll be going against officer's opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Scolding. Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I can tell you through local knowledge that the last time any type of flooding took place anywhere near that was 1929. I think Mike was about 2 years old. I know a lady that used to live just down the road in an old dwelling, was not there anymore, and she remembers it being slightly flooded in 1929, way over in the deepest part. So, but going on from that, I've said this many times about Wisbeach, and I'm sure officers will get sick and tired of me saying it, but I still struggle with. Well, let's take Sutton Road for an example. They went through the sequential test, and that was recommended to us in back in the day. And I think I remember saying something like, "This sequential test drives a wooden peg through the heart of the sequential test whole scheme," because there is no way on earth that Sutton Road development couldn't have been built out in Wisbeach East. No way on earth. But that was recommended for approval. So you can see, I know Nick and the guys will have an answer for me, I know they will, but it still frustrates the hell out of me that you can build in Wisbeach where there's far more chance of ever being flooded. In fact, Wisbeach is the only place that's been flooded almost in living memory. But you can't build on something like this, whereas with a little bit of mitigation, it just doesn't resonate with me very well at all. But anyway, that's my little bit of spiel. And,
yeah, thank you for thank you for that little bit of history lesson, Councillor Sutton. I'm sure you're not that old, Councillor Cornwall. Certainly don't look it anyway. You've done very well. So we're still in debate. Anyone who wants to add to this debate at all? No, we're finished. Thank you. Debate's finished. Officers, would you like to come in now and
if I may, Chairman, you've heard what officers have had to say on the issue of flood risk and the application of the sequential test. If committee is minded to approve the application, in your reasons why you wish to approve the application, you need to specifically identify why the sequential test should not be followed in this particular instance, and those reasons have to relate to this particular application, because that's the whole idea of justifying a break away from policy. Because if you cite generalities, then those generalities would be applied to every single application we happen to get in the future in relation to flood risk, and that clearly wouldn't be appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, nothing to add, Alison, David? Right, I'm looking for a proposal on the scheme now. You just couldn't wait, Councillor Sutton, could you? Carry on.
Yes, I propose we go against officer's recommendation and we pass this for these two dwellings. As I said earlier, I prefer to see single dwellings, single story with escape route into the roof. Would sit much better with the area. But in terms of why, in my view, because it's already a development site, the extra one dwelling to me, sort of overrides that sequential test. Whereas if it was an open site, we wouldn't have that argument. That would be where I'm at.
Thank you. So we've got.
Is that with authority to apply?
Of course, yeah.
Conditions.
Yeah, that's officer, yeah. So really now we'll go back. So we've got a proposal to go against officer's recommendation to approve this application, proposed by Councillor Sutton, seconded by Councillor Murphy. Can we all go and put hands up to? You can.
If I may. I think Council has said about the sequential test is all right, but I don't think we want to be bogged down by saying we can't do this again because of this, that, and the other. It's like what we say here. We take it on its own merit, and we take each one as it comes up on its own merit, whether it's in sequential tests or whatever it is.
That's fine, but you're second.
I'm second, yeah, certainly.
I thought that,
and the other thing is, which you don't like, but also put common sense in there.
Well, I'm sure that's I'm sure that's noted by officers, but we won't put that down at all. So anyway, we've gone against officer recommendation proposed by Councillor Sutton, seconded by Councillor Murphy. Conditions by officers. Can we vote on that proposal, please?
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Yeah, that application has been approved then. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Right, so we'll hand over to Alison again to present application FYR 220942. It's an FDC application, agenda item number 8. So please, Alison, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the erection of up to 5 dwellings involving demolition of existing garages. It's an outline application with all matters reserved. The location is the garage site, Drybread Road, Whittlesea. The applicant is Fenland District Council and the agent is BHD Limited. The reason the scheme is before Planning Committee is that Fenland District Council are the applicant. There are no updates to report. The current slide details the site in both plan and aerial form. An illustrative site plan has been submitted which demonstrates how the quantum of development proposed under this application could potentially be delivered on the site. No details are, however, committed, and these would be dealt with via subsequent reserve matters should outline planning permission be granted. The current slide shows the site in context, with the upper left-hand image showing the access to the garages between 98A and 98B Drybread Road. The upper right-hand image shows the northern section of the site viewed from the top of the access road. The lower left-hand image shows a view looking towards Feldale Place, and the final lower right-hand image shows the grassed area to the south of the site that has a frontage with Feldale Place. The submission is before Planning Committee solely as a result of Fenland District Council being the applicant. Thereby, consideration falls outside the scheme of delegation. There are no unresolved issues that would render the scheme outside policy, and as such, the recommendation is one of grant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison. We haven't got any speakers on this application. I'd now like to invite members to put questions to officers. If you raise your hand if you have any. So questions to officers. Councillor Cornwall, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The entrance off Drybed Road is quite narrow, shall I say. Does it actually meet our requirements that we normally apply?
Through you, Chairman, sort of fingers on buzzers. Yeah, from a planning point of view and from a highway point of view, you've got to consider what the starting point is. And this is a garage site. So you compare, if the garages were all in use, would that generate more, the same, or less traffic than the proposed development? And given the situation, given the number of dwellings, whilst the access is not what we would accept if it was a fresh development, so to speak, given the context, we can't really raise an objection on highway roads.
So, Chairman, even though the garages appear to have been, how can I put it? Well, certainly not in use for about 50 years anyway, by the look of them, that then becomes still an essential argument. I mean, bear in mind nowadays vehicles are not as small as they used to be quite honest. I mean, we've seen this with things like parking spaces and so on now, I mean, it is getting more and more difficult. And of course, presumably that nobody lives down there at the moment, so there's no real pedestrians going in and out, whereas if you build houses, there's going to be pedestrians coming in and out as well. And so I suppose we're looking at a shared access, really, are we, there for that development?
You, Chairman, whilst the garages may not be in significant use at the moment, we have to look at what the lawful use is, when it is as a garage parking court. And when you want, you'll be walking up to your garage, get your car out or your moped or whatever, drive off, come back, park up and walk back down that alleyway again. So it's not really different.
No.
Sure, actually, Chairman, that hasn't happened for some considerable time, but never mind, I won't go.
But I mean, but it could be yesterday, couldn't it? Really, we don't know. So we've got to take it as it is. This application has got to be done on the basis of how it is before us. So yeah, absolutely. Good question. Any more questions to officers? No. No. Okay. So members, debate the application, please. I just let anybody else if they want to come to it. Councillor Sutton, have you got anything to before we do that?
I'll add my usual comments, Chairman, that I've always said that we never seem to get best use out of these sites. We've said it time and time again, but on the other hand, we have to look at what's in front of us, and from what I can see, there's no reason to not approve it.
Absolutely correct, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Scolney, do you want us to do say anything? No? Okay, any more before we bring up? We're closing the discussion now. Officers, do you want to come in and do anything? No, so we've really got a proposal on the table from Councillor French to go with officer recommendation to approve this. Councillor Scolding looks to me as though he wants to second it. So to sum it all up, we've got a proposition proposed by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Scolding, to go with officer recommendation to approve this application. Can we have a show of hands on that, please?
That's a unanimous decision. Councillor Scanlon not take part in this item.
Yeah, that's noted, but that application has been approved. Thank you very much. So we'll go to, and I'll hand over to Alison again to present application F/YR 22 1149F, agenda item number 9. So again, Alison, when you're ready, you'll be very busy this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the erection of 3 dwellings, 2-storey, 4-bed, and the formation of an access on land east of Highland View, Benwick Road, Doddington. The applicant is Mr. J. Jolly and the agent is Liam Luntowler of Peter Humphrey Associates. The reason that the application is before Planning Committee is the number of representations received contrary to the officer recommendation. There are no updates to report. The current slide shows the site in both plan and aerial form. As indicated in the officer report, the site lies approximately 1.3 kilometres to the west of Doddington within an area of open and generally undeveloped arable farmland interspersed with sporadic development, primarily the Fields End leisure tourism site and horticultural nursery, along with some ad hoc dwellings. For context, the following slide has been produced. The application site is located in the position of the red star, with the figure 8 to the west being the Fields End water site and the large grey structure to the east being Delfland Nurseries. Members are advised that of the approvals granted within the area captured on the aerial image, i.e. the wider view, 4 dwellings were approved with occupancy restrictions, 3 were replacement dwellings. Permissions relating to 15D, 60 E to G and Askham Row were all committee overturns. 2 of the dwellings that were approved predate the current local plan, and 1 decision was made where weight was given to emerging policy and localism, and the absence of harm gained officer support. The submitted application seeks full planning permission, and the current site plan on display shows the intended layout of the development. 3 detached dwellings are proposed with field access to the west of the site. As indicated in the officer report, the form of development indicated, notwithstanding that the site is an elsewhere location, would be to the detriment of the character and appearance of the area, and also considered at odds with the dwelling known as Highland View, which would be dominated by dwellings to each side. The current slide shows the dwelling design with plots 1 and 2 being as displayed and plot 3 being a handed version of the same dwelling type. This street scene view clearly illustrates the impact that the development would have on the rural area in character and visual terms, and shows the dominance of the existing bungalow Highland View that would arise following the delivery of the scheme if approved. The upper left-hand image shows Highland View, with the remaining images capturing the longer range view to the site frontage and beyond. Meadowfield House can be seen in the distance on the lower right-hand image. To summarise, the application site comprises agricultural land on the northern side of Benwick Road, approximately 1.3 kilometres to the west of the settlement of Doddington. Apart from the occasional sporadic dwelling, horticultural nursery, Fields End leisure and tourism site, the site is characterised by open and generally undeveloped arable farmland. This application seeks full planning approval for the erection of 3 2-storey 4-bedroom dwellings with the formation of an access to the east side. The access is proposed to be shared by the proposed dwelling and will form a field access to the agricultural land at the rear of the site. This proposal was preceded by an earlier outline application for a similar scheme. This was refused on the basis of the principle of development, its impact on countryside character and highway safety. It is noted that that 2021 refusal went before the chairman and was refused as a delegated item. Of the 3 reasons for refusal of the earlier outline scheme, this revised proposal only addresses one of them, that being highway safety. There remain fundamental issues in respect of the principle of development and its impact on the character of the countryside, remaining in contravention with policies LP3, LP12 and LP16. Hence, the recommendation remains one of refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you once again, Alison. We have 1 speaker on this application. I'd now like to invite Peter Humphrey, of course, he's the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. You have 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I say, it's good to see you all again and wish you all a happy Christmas.
I'm pleased to see the application at Maney was a common sense decision. We're looking for one here. Basically, there's an opportunity to provide 3 self-built plots. We know from our profession there is a big shortage of self-built plots, and Doddington being a growth village, this will help in a small way deliver some self-built plots, because I know the client has got people wanting to buy them. The site will enhance this edge of village development, and it is close to the adjacent Askham village community and very close to a village of holiday lodges. So whilst this may not be in the village, it is very close to an approved village, we call it, next door. It has dwellings both left and right, making it very difficult to farm. Hence the reason Mr. Jolly is looking to develop the land, because it's in fact a useless piece to farm at the front. Yes, it's difficult enough at the back, but the front is small and very difficult to work. House types have been redesigned since the first application in accordance with the Parish Council's comments, and if they or the planners want even more amendments, we're happy to do that on any reserved matter application. Hence, the Parish Council were not against the development. Environmental and Health at Fenland District Council had no objections. Highways request conditions which we can comply with. There were 6 letters of support with only 1 objection. And I'm pleased to say, Mr. Chairman, the site is in flood zone 1. Whilst that is the case, the local plan proposes 311 dwellings plus in the new emerging local plan, and this is less than 1% of the proposal. The development will provide employment during the course of construction, and we would request that members support this application using their powers of common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. We have really missed you. I'd like to invite members to put questions to Mr. Humphrey. You know what to do if you have any. So I've got one in the new local plan or the emerging local plan. Can you tell me if this site would be likely to be approved if in the new local plan?
In the emerging local plan, as I read it, Mr. Chairman, the site is not within the new boundary, but when you look at the red line, there is also an area of red that shows they're happy with development encroaching that way towards my client's plots, albeit not included.
Okay, so if that was approved, then it'd be 311 plus 3 then, wouldn't it? So yeah, so thank you very much for that. So any more questions from Mr. Humphrey before I let him go? No. Thank you very much.
Yes, just one. Said it's to do with the highway, but I was reading on 5.3. They have no objections. It's only the field behind they've got objections on.
Okay.
Through you, Chairman, I mean, there's no recommendation for refusal on highway grounds of this application. The previous application was refused on highway grounds because there were 3 individual access points. The application has been amended, so there's just 1 access point, which the Highway Authority are sort of happy with. They do in their comments, I think, express concern about what may or may not happen at the back, but that would be a matter to be considered at that particular time.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions to officers at all? No. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So members, I'd now like you to invite members to debate the application, please. Thank you. Councillor Scolding, thank you.
I can see this as an infill. You've got buildings to the right, buildings to the left. And highways have not got a problem with it, so I can't see a problem with it at all. And and the plans of it look nice, so I think it'd be a nice place to finish it coming into Doddington. It'll look lovely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, councillor Scotland. Councillor Cornwall, please. Thank you.
Chairman, were we not told at the last meeting that there were plenty of self-build plots available within Fenland? I seem to think that statement was made, and if so, that's contrary to what the applicant said.
I'll I'll get Nick to come in there and give an answer, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and through you. Yes, you're quite correct, Councillor Caldwell. The evidence points quite strongly that we are exceeding the delivery of self and custom build plots over and above the evidence that we have in terms of the number of people on our register and the number of actual completed houses as well. Just to highlight to members that in no part of the planning application that was submitted to us was self or custom build mentioned. So the agent has brought that up as a new item at today's meeting. We've not previously been aware of that. So sorry, I don't have the figures in front of me because I wasn't expecting to have that question put to me.
I thought I was awake at the last meeting when that statement was made. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Cornwall. Councillor Davis, please.
Yeah, I have a problem with refusing this one simply because we've got Askham Village community, we've got fresh water or whatever they're called with 60 lodges and caravans, and then we Askham Row just further along, which is very similar design. So I'm afraid I'm leaning towards going against officers' recommendations.
Okay, right. Councillor French.
Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Davis. It's only 2 or 3 months since we actually approved the ones in is it Hospital Road, and I can't see much difference to this.
We're still in debate, guys. You want to go on the add to it before I finish the debate? No, thank you very much for that then. I'm going to bring officers in to sum up their comments.
Through you for me, Chairman. I'm not sure that necessarily the existence of a holiday lodge development sets any kind of precedent for the erection of permanent dwellings outside of a settlement, as far as I'm aware. I think in addition as well, we're talking about the proximity to Askham Row, which, just looking at it very briefly, we're talking about another 500 metres or so along the road, so another 500 metres or so outside the village. I think probably just worth taking members back to the local plan and the policies, rural areas development policy. So development will only be permitted in villages. The developed footprint of the village is defined as the continuous built form of the settlement and excludes individual buildings and groups of dispersed or intermittent buildings that are clearly detached from the continuous built up area of the settlement. Agricultural buildings and associated land on the edge of the settlement. I'm struggling to see how this site cannot be considered as within the open countryside with respect. And if this is part of the village, then pretty much everywhere in Fenland would be classed as being within a village. So I'm sorry, but I'm struggling to see members' reasoning there. I appreciate that may not be common sense, Councillor Murphy.
Right, so we're still in questions for officers. Anybody else would like to before I close that? No, right. So we're closing that. So we'll go into proposal. And who wants to make a proposal on this? Councillor Scolding.
Yes, I'd like to go against officer's recommendation.
Okay.
Do you want?
Yeah, please. I'd like some reasons why you're going to do that, please.
Well,
yes.
I think it will enhance coming into Doddington, so I'll put it as an LP 16. And I think plans look good, so I'm happy if you are.
Chairman, I'm quite concerned about that being the reason for going against your adopted local plan policy, because that doesn't give any indication of why your existing plan policy about only allowing development in the open countryside in very limited circumstances should be put to one side. In this instance, the reason given is very general in its nature and would apply to any development anywhere in the district. And I think that would leave us in a very tricky position. So I am very concerned, Chairman.
Okay, can you add anything else to that to make it more?
Well, like I said before, it is infill. You've got houses one side and the other, and I think that's just infill and it enhances the area.
Chairman, I remain as concerned as ever.
I think to go against officer recommendation on this one, and I've still got to keep an open mind. I think we need more reasons why we're going to do that, because I think, as Nick says, it could put it at risk if we just did LP 16. It is general, but Councillor Sutton might come to.
Chairman, you'll know on several occasions I've helped out with this type of thing with reasons to do it, but to be fair, I can't come up with a reason.
Okay,
to go against officer's recommendation.
That's fine. So what we'll do is we'll park that. Okay. So have we got a seconder on it for a start? Because we may not need that. Have we got a seconder on this one? If we get one, of course, we haven't got Councillor Purser. Can you add anything to Councillor Scolding's?
I just totally agree with what Sir Councillor Scolding actually said there, but you know, I can't find the reason off the top of my head for it, I don't know.
Chairman,
well, we're a little sorry.
If I may, is that whilst officers are arriving and delivering you a recommendation, that recommendation is based on your adopted policies. They're not ours. You know, we dutifully assess applications against them. So please don't think I'm trying to be deliberately awkward.
Absolutely not.
If the reasons given for going against your policy can't be bettered and you still wish to proceed, then that's within your gift. All I am doing is flagging the significant weaknesses and risks around that, which may have consequences for future decision making. I'm not sure if the solicitor wanted to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the other aspect of giving inadequate reasons for opposing recommendation is to make a legally dubious decision. Should there be somebody who wants to challenge the decision that's made, then in this instance, there may well be grounds to do so.
Okay. Councillor Murphy indicated that he'd want to speak, so or add something to.
I'll just add to the debate really about it, because I think I would find it very, very difficult sitting here in the future if exactly what the officer said to us, that we will not be able to stop any of this building anywhere else. I think it's a long way out. 500 metres is a long way out of a village as size of Doddington. I don't think it really ought to be there, to be perfectly honest with you. And if it's going to make a hard difference for us to sit here in the future and go 500 yards out of every town and village there is, I think we need our heads testing, to be honest with you.
Okay, so I think we've got to take Nick's advice on this one. I think we'd be silly not to. I can see the relevance of Councillor Scolding's proposal and Councillor Purser's second, but bearing in mind being chairman here, I don't think if no one's got, if the two councillors haven't got nothing else to add to it, I don't think I can sit here and absolutely allow this to happen, because I said, like the solicitor said, kindly said, we could be open to challenge, and that's the last thing we want for this council.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, if I may. I'm no expert on running of meeting protocol type stuff, in my language, but I believe it would take a formal withdrawal of the proposal for that to happen, Chairman.
Yeah.
So if the proposal is still on the table and that's been seconded, then
it's got to go ahead.
It would proceed to a vote.
So that's what I was going to come to next, because I do know how to. Well, some people say I know how to do it. So, and some people wouldn't. So, Councillor Spalding, do you still want to keep that proposal on the table?
It has to be a vote.
Yep. Yeah, we have to vote, but if he's still going to do, sorry, he's not. Sorry, you still want to go ahead, or you don't? You do. So now, no. Let's get it all in a nutshell here, because Councillor Spalding still wants that proposing to go against off LP4 housing. Okay, so what we'll do, have a look before we go on. Let's see, unless anybody else. I haven't got my book with me, unfortunately.
Yeah, through you, if I may, through you, Chairman.
Yeah, carry on. 1 minute. Let's have.
The legal officer to come in on this, because if we haven't got a proposal which contradicts the two recommendations for approval, then I don't see how we can vote on it, one way or the other. Surely we've got to have the proposal that covers both of these reasons for refusal before we can take a vote. And if we haven't got those, how can we? I don't quite get it.
Okay, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I think we've had a proposal under seconder. I think whether we think the reasons are inadequate that have been given, or we may disagree with those reasons, I think the safe thing to do is go ahead and have a vote. Given we've had a proposal, we've had a seconder.
Yeah.
And you've had the advice from your officers.
Yeah, and some advice from me for what it's worth, that we do need to carry through this. It will probably, it looks as though to me it will be defeated, then there'll be look like another proposal on the table. Surely that must be the way to go on. Okay. But before we do that, Nick, quickly, because time is moving on. Thank you. But thank you for your help, of course.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Spalding has added in LP4 as a reason for granting plan permission contrary to policy, and that policy in the local plan is about housing targets for the district as a whole. And what I would say is that the council has got a 5-year land supply, and we've passed the housing delivery test and the grant of planning permission for was it 6 dwellings? 3 dwellings, I beg your pardon. It's not necessary to approve this contrary to your policies, because we have no issues in terms of being able to meet our housing requirement.
Yeah, so
but if as before, if that remains as a reason, notwithstanding my comment, then that's within the member's gift to proceed on that basis.
Right, I'm going to move forward. I'm definitely going to move forward now. So we're going to take a proposal on to go against officer's recommendation to approve this application. It's been proposed by Councillor Spalding, seconded by Councillor Purser. Who would like to, can we have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
That proposal's failed.
It has. So I'm looking for another proposal now, please. Councillor Murphy. Okay. Okay. Councillor Miss Scanlon is going to second it. So we've got a counter proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse this application, proposed by Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Murphy. Show of hands on that proposal, please.
Six.
That application has been refused. Thank you. So now the time is 2:45. Can we be back in sort of 10 minutes-ish? Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We're all back up, we're all back, aren't we? So, Jan's hanging a coat up, so that's good. Now I'll hand over to Alison, without further ado, Senior Development Officer here, to present application FYR 220706/0, agenda item number 10. So over to you, Alison, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of up to 4 dwellings. It's an outline application with matters committed in respect of access. The location is land east of Sandbank Farmhouse, Sandbank, Wisbeach, St Mary. The applicant is Mr. and Mrs. J. Humphrey, and the agent is Helen Monk, Swan Edwards Architecture Limited. The application is before Planning Committee, given the number of representations received, contrary to the officer recommendation. There are no updates to report. It is noted that the scheme comes before committee, given that 8 letters of support have been received, in addition to a favourable recommendation of the parish council, conditional on the footpath delivery up to and including plot 4. The current slide shows the application site edge grid in both plan form and as an aerial image. Current records do not include the approved dwelling to the southeast of the site. However, this is captured on the site plan, which will be in the next slide. It is noted that this consent was originally granted planning permission under F/YR 21/0702/0 as a committee overturn, as members considered that the benefits of the scheme outweighed the harm caused to the character and appearance of the area, and considered that there were no sequentially preferable sites within Wisbeach St Mary to accommodate the quantum of development proposed, and thus the sequential test was deemed as passed. Reserve matters approval was subsequently granted. Again, this was a committee overturn, as officers had sought to resist the proposal on the grounds of scale and character. Again, members determined that the benefits of the scheme outweighed the harm caused to the character and appearance of the area. An indicative site plan accompanies the application, albeit all matters are reserved for later consideration other than the access. The illustrative details show a linear development to demonstrate how the quantum of development could be accommodated. Within the officer report, context is provided, noting that the development would extend ribbon development on land that presents as agricultural and affords a natural distinction between the developed built form of Wisbeach St Mary and the open countryside beyond, save for the sporadic development to the northwest. These photographs capture the open character of the land under consideration. In summary, the application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 4 dwellings on agricultural grassland in flood zone 3 on the east side of Sandbank, Wisbeach St Mary. The application commits matters of access, with remaining matters reserved for later approval. Whilst Wisbeach St Mary is a growth village as identified in policy LP3, the application site would extend the existing linear feature of the development footprint of the settlement into an area of agricultural grassland. This area of grassland at the site is mirrored by agricultural land opposite, which forms a natural demarcation between the developed built form of Wisbeach St Mary and the surrounding countryside beyond. Development encroaching into this land would harm the character and appearance of the area. As such, the proposal would be contrary to the requirements of policy LP12. Flood mitigation measures proposed the raising of finished floor levels to 1 metre above ground for the entire development, which would result in cumulative dominance of the development within the street scene. Matters relating to access have been satisfactorily addressed. However, there are still fundamental issues pertaining to the principle of development and its harm to the rural character and street scene in this location. The scheme is considered unacceptable in relation to these matters and contrary to policies LP3, LP12 and LP16. Hence, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep, thanks once again, Alison. We have 1 speaker on this application, and now I'd like to invite Shana Jackson. Of course, she's the agent, to make her presentation to committee. Again, you have 5 minutes when you're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this application. As you've just heard, the scheme is for up to 4 dwellings and is submitted in outline with matters committed in respect of access only. The scheme is before you with support from the parish council and with 8 letters of support from residents along Sandbank. Members will recall an application for a single dwelling on the land to the immediate southeast of the site. This too was recommended for refusal. However, in their deliberation, members considered that the single dwelling would adjoin the built form and that it was within a growth village and would not constitute ribbon development. Accordingly, the committee resolved to approve the application. The scheme which is before you now is the same in many aspects as the plot next door. If anything, it's in a better position as it will infill the gap between the building plot to the southeast and the remainder of the built form to the northwest along Sand Bank. Given its position between existing buildings, it cannot reasonably be considered as ribbon development. Instead, I would agree with the parish council and say that the site is within the village. Wisbech St Mary is a growth village where new development is encouraged. Policy LP3 states that development including village extensions are appropriate in such locations. The proposal before you would provide for 4 new dwellings within this growth village. Even if the site were to be considered as outside of the existing footprint, Policy LP3 still allows for such development as it provides for extensions to the built-up area. As such, the principle of development is supported in any event in policy terms. A further benefit to the proposal includes the footpath to the front of the site. This will link with the footpath included as part of the neighbouring plot. It will provide a safer pedestrian access route for the parents and children of future residents and those at Melissa Park and further afield who currently walk to the primary school. It will also help with reducing the speed of traffic along Sandbank, which is something the parish council is currently working towards. The indicative drawings show that 4 quality homes on spacious plots can be achieved on the site. The proposed finished floor levels will match the neighbouring plot to the southeast, and the details of how this will be accommodated into the building in design terms will be dealt with during the design stages of the Reserve Matters application. There are no objections received from any of the technical consultees, and the scheme has support from both the parish council and from neighbours in the immediate vicinity of the site. The proposal would bring significant benefits to the area by means of providing housing within a growth village and by providing a footpath to help link the existing and future residents to the amenities within the village centre. I would argue that there is no conflict with the policies as set out in the reasons for refusal and hope you're able to grant planning permission accordingly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms Jackson. Members, questions, clarifications from Ms Jackson, if you have any. Councillor Miscannon to kick off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome back for both of us. In paragraphs 9.16, it refers to the existing application that's got planning permission as a grand design for the entrance to the area of the village. So obviously the committee at that time decided that this was an entry to the village. Do you feel that the this application will diminish that in any way?
I think it would depend on your interpretation as to what the entrance to the village would be. My opinion would be that there is development all the way along Sandbank, towards the north of the site as well as the south. So I personally wouldn't have said that other site was the entrance to the village, because to me, the whole area of land would be an infill plot within the wider setting.
The property that was granted by this committee against officers' advice was to make a grand entry design. In my opinion, and it seems to conflict slightly with yours, the adding of these houses will diminish that grand design entry into the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miscannon. Anybody else at all? No. Not see any burning desire. No, thank you very much. Questions to officers, members, if you have any. Councillor Cornwall.
Yeah, one of the elements raised is the fact that the floor level will have to be at least a metre above ground level, which presumably was also a requirement of the previous approval. So if that wasn't an issue there, and I do understand there are very peculiar levels there where the road is very, very high and the land on which these are to be built is quite low, to say the least, and I can understand why you're going to lift although why there is a necessity to actually lift, how come that it isn't an issue for one, but it is an issue for a few more?
David.
Through you, Chairman, if my memory serves me correctly, when the Reserve Matters application came before committee back in August, I think it was August this year, the recommendation was to refuse due to the overall scale and design of the proposed dwelling, and that would be exacerbated by the need to raise the land levels by a metre to sort of make the site safe from flooding, given it's in flood zone 3. I think the reason for refusal here relates more to, again, the overall impact on the character of the area by having 4 houses there, again, exacerbated by, you know, the need to raise those levels up, so that you are potentially looking at structures that are sort of quite a way above existing ground level.
Yeah, I think I can understand that. And my apologies, because I wasn't actually, I hadn't returned to committee in August anyway, so I was not here for that application. But rather than having, how can I put this simply, one dwelling high, what difference then does, if you have 3 or 4 dwellings next door to them high, they'll all be the same, won't they? So how does one act as a detriment to the others? I don't quite get it. They'll all be high then, won't they? You know?
I think you'd also, in the context of this particular application, have to look at the relationship with the property immediately to the north of the application site, which sits at its existing level. And as I say, I think the overall concern is that not only are you introducing sort of a level of urbanisation within this gap at the edge of the village, but you are also exacerbating that visual impact through the raising of the levels as well.
Members, are still questions to officers? Can't see any. Right, that's finished then. Members, could we look to debate the application then? Who'd like to kick that off? Councillor Davis, please. Lovely, thank you.
I don't see, well, the only difference between this and the previous application is one was in flood zone 1, this one's in flood zone 3. There are the same reasons for refusal. I think the house that was built where we went against officers, we did say, some of us said there would be a precedent and that there would be more and more. And if we approve these, then it's not going to be long before the next one comes along and the next one, until you're almost up to that junction there. So I think officers have actually got this right.
Anybody else to like to add to this debate? Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I don't disagree with Councillor Davis. I think we have, and I agree with myself in that, because I voted in favour of the single dwelling there. But I think we have made a rod for our own back. I fear that if we turn it down and it goes to appeal, that we might get stung for cost because of inconsistency, because it would be inconsistent to pass that one in the same field as the other 4. I think we're just in a difficult position whereby, we look at each and its own merits. I'm sitting on the fence at the minute, Chairman.
Councillor Davis, you'd like to come back?
Yeah, I don't think that there is inconsistency here, because I think the point with the single house was the fact that there was another house opposite. Now this is definitely a block that's going right out into open countryside. So I do view this differently.
Yes, it certainly protrudes in the open countryside, certainly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking up the minutes of the last application in August. It was proposed by Councillor Sutton, seconded by Councillor Mayor, that application be refused, and that was lost. And then it was proposed by Councillor Benny and myself and agreed the application be granted against officers' recommendations with the authority. Members do not support officers' recommendations for refusal of planning permission as they feel the height difference of 40 centimetres make no impact. Now, we agreed that it was going to be something different. We didn't think for 1 minute that we're going to come back in a couple of months' time for 4. So I have to agree with other members. I really feel that, you know, we stick our neck out on the line for, you know, what's in front of us. I'm quite disappointed to see this back, you know, a couple of months later, wanting 4.
That's all.
Through
Yeah.
through you, Chairman, just to highlight, it is a different site.
Sorry.
It's next door.
It's next door.
Yeah.
But even so, it's 4, isn't it?
Right. So we're still in debate, everybody, but thank you for that bit of information, Councillor French. Any more? We're still in debate. I don't see anybody else.
Chairman.
Oh, Councillor Cornwall. please
Yes, I
do.
can see now, looking at the plan, that the other application that was approved was in fact opposite existing development on the other side of the road. Whereas this particular plot, although it's different, it actually gives the appearance of just being another add-on to the same plot, but that's beside the point. That in fact opposite, there is completely open countryside. So I suppose, yes, officers have got this particular one right, because if we said, no, we wanted to maintain a gap between them all, then this is the way that we do it. We you know, yes, we have one development, but opposite is development. Whereas opposite here, there is nothing. It's completely open land. So yeah, you can see the argument now. Thank you. Sorry. I was
No.
getting slightly confused, but then
No.
at my age, as I've been about since 1929, you have to understand it. don't you?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that to the committee's attention that as you quite rightfully said, there's a house opposite and then it's open fields both sides of the road up to the junction. So still debate. Anybody else wants to add to it? Councillor Cornwall's in last. No, I'm going to close the debate now. Officers, would you like to make your final representations, please?
A point of clarification, it got me as well. So Councillor French referred to the minutes of the meeting, and that the quote that you were making wasn't the site next door, that was a different one. So the issue of the 40 centimetres wasn't relevant. So yeah.
That's fine. Well, anyway, any more to add to it apart from that comment? Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for a proposal on it. Councillor Davis, please. Okay. Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Miss Candler. You just had your hand up just before Councillor Cornwall. So we've got a recommendation to go with officer's recommendation to refuse this application, proposed by Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Miss Scanlon. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Joe. That application has been refused. Thank you. Moving swiftly on. I'd like to now hand over to Alison Hoffman to present application FYR 22-1187. It's another FDC application, agenda item number 11. So please, Alison, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the erection of a dwelling involving demolition of existing garage block. It's an outline application with matters committed in respect of access on land north of 6 Riverside Gardens, Arson Drove. As Councillor Connor indicates, it's a Fenland District Council application and the agent is BHD Limited. And because it's a Fenland application, it's before committee. Councillors will have received a written update advising that Cambridge County Council Highways consider that no significant adverse effect will occur to the public highway as a result of the proposal, noting that access is in fact committed as part of the scheme. At variance to the officer report, an additional condition will be appended to the decision requiring the access to be laid out as the approved plan prior to the first occupation of the dwelling. And this reserve matter removed from condition 1 as quoted in the report, should the committee be minded to move the officer recommendation. The current slide shows the location of the site in both plan form and as an aerial image. Located at the end of a no-through road, the site is currently occupied by 6 unused garages. There is allotment land to the north of the site, and to the east is the north level drain, as can be seen to the south and west are residential dwellings. This is an outline application with only access committed, with this being derived via the existing roadway, which serves the existing garages and the residential properties to the south. As indicated in the officer report, there are no policy issues arising and the site can accommodate the quantum of development proposed. Matters relating to residential amenity and design will be addressed as part of any subsequent reserve matters submission. The slide currently on display shows the garage block with the lower right-hand image showing the adjoining property at number 6. Just the glimpse of the side wall of number 6. The next slide again shows number 6 with the lower image showing the view looking southward along Riverside Gardens from the site. These images show the development to the western side of Riverside Gardens. In summary, the site relates to an existing garage block situated to the north of number 6 Riverside Gardens. The application seeks outline planning permission for 1 dwelling. As the application is for outline planning permission, the matter for consideration is the principle of the development of the site for residential purposes. An indicative site plan demonstrates the site is capable of sustaining 1 dwelling with on-site parking and private amenity space, and there would be no adverse impacts on the character of the wider area. Taking national and local planning policy into account and having regard to all relevant material considerations, it is recommended that outline planning permission be granted, subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions, again noting the change to condition 1 proposed and the addition of an access condition to ensure delivery of the same prior to occupation of the dwelling. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Alison. We have no speakers on this application. I'd now like to invite members to put questions or clarifications to officers. Anybody? Councillor Cornwall, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, when we visited the site, we hadn't actually seen the report, but we did actually very clearly indicate on our visit that the importance of the bottom end, which incorporates this plot actually, is desperately important in relation to turning and so on. It's a very narrow road. Most of the existing residents along the road seem to park on the road, so there's nowhere to turn. So whatever happens, it is desperately important that whatever is approved gives sufficient space to turn. And that issue has actually been picked up by the parish council as well, I see. So perhaps, folks, we got that element right, haven't we? Because we did actually spot it ourselves anyway. And it's been further complicated probably because of the other entrance onto the road on the riverside from the other development on the other side. So I think it's important to stress that whatever we do, if we do approve it, it has to incorporate very strict controls over the access and turning for the remainder of Riverside and not just this plot. Eh? Well, the question is, has that been incorporated? I suppose, really, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, shut up.
Okay, so I'll take that as we're in questions for officers. I would take that as a pertinent question.
Thank you through you, Chairman. Yes, access is committed as part of the application, and therefore the arrangement at that sort of turning head is incorporated as a detailed matter as part of the application.
Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. You know, we've seen earlier on in the committee reports about flood zone 3 and the sequential test. Can somebody explain to me why this particular building couldn't be put on Brewery Gardens? Because there's 4 plots there passed in flood zone 1. And I don't see any reason why that couldn't fit quite comfortably on there, just as we've been advised previously. And God forbid that anybody thought that we were favouring FTC zone land. Thank you.
I'm sure.
Part of this, sorry.
No,
to jump in.
I'm sure you'll do your best to.
Part of this-
Councillor Sutton's concerns. Thank you. Sorry.
Part of applying the sequential test is to whether or not a site is available. And once the first clod of soil has, and the commitment to build has happened, it no longer is available. I know I've not been out to Brewery Close for a while, but I know that the applicants in that instance were very, very keen to get started. And that they were intending to build out that site. So in the case of that Brewery Close site, it wouldn't be reasonably available, therefore it wouldn't be factored into the sequential test.
I can confirm they have made a start on site because I have complaints about the site.
Yes.
Well, that was
That's how
going.
you find out these things.
That
is
was
it?
going to be my next question. You know, then we have now the evidence, but this report was written, it seems like, without that evidence.
Can you use your microphone, please, Councillor?
Sorry, Joe, you smacked my hand. There wasn't any specific reasons why these other sites could be built out, and actually the report didn't mention Brewery Gardens. It just said about other sites, 2 other sites was available, but this house wouldn't fit on them. And it didn't seem to mention why it couldn't go on Brewery Gardens at all. So thus my question. But, you know, if that, you know, Nick has confirmed that if he's had complaints there, that obviously is starting to be built out, but you know, I think that should be evidenced for the reports.
Yeah, through you, Chairman, I agree, and I think that's fair criticism. There is a gap in that report, and I apologise for that.
Yes, as Councillor Sutton says, we wouldn't like to think with favouritism just for FDC applications above any other. Transparency is key.
Yeah, I stand corrected for the second time in this
My
one
goodness.
item, so clearly I'm not getting any Christmas presents this year, Chairman. 10.8 does say that the submitted sequential test information fails to identify any sites with extant permissions, which would be at lower risk. No other sites are known, and the sequential test is therefore passed. So we've said that, though I agree there could have been that additional bit of information to say there are some, but they're not truly available. So I acknowledge the point.
Councillor Davis, I know what you're going to say, but carry on.
Well, you wouldn't normally be expected to when an officer's writing the report to look at and start listing basically all the.
No.
So I think just the fact that the sequential test has been passed, then that's it.
It's fair comment. That's fair comment. Anyway, Councillor, would you like to add anything to that, or is that no? And so we're up for officers still. Any questions for officers? No. So I'm asking members to debate the application now. Who'd like to kick that off? Councillor Miss Scanlon, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, in my opinion, and I would support this application because whatever goes on is built down there, no matter who it's built by, it's got to be better than what's there at the moment because it's an absolute tip and it's an eyesore. And I would think the resident of number 6 would glad to see a house built there instead of what is there at the moment, which is a bunch of derelict garages, overgrown, and I would support this application.
Okay, councillor Miss Scanlon, wise comments, no doubt. Councillor Purser and then councillor Davis.
Actually, sort of finding something to speak about that. Yeah, I would totally, I was literally about to say exactly the same words that Councillor Scanlon was about to say there. I would think looking at the garages there, they're fairly unused, what have you, in there. Probably got quite a few creatures in there that people don't really want in their next door neighbour, things like that. Looks a complete eyesore with those garages there. I think to get rid of those and get a nice house down there. The other, excuse me, the other question actually came up was, is there room to turn there? Well, looking at the plan I've actually got in front of me just there, it's actually got a part there for vehicle turning, so that's actually taken consideration anyway.
Yeah.
So I completely, I'll go with this application completely.
Okay, thank you, councillor Purser. Councillor Davis.
Both councillor Scanlon and councillor Purser have said about the derelict site. That's not a material reason for granting permission. Having said that, and I personally have asked questions about the turnaround space and had my fears allayed, because I've been told that the average delivery vehicle, i.e. Tesco's and people like that sort of size, would be able to turn around. So that covers to an ambulance going in there and being able to turn around. So I would be quite happy to support the application.
I'm getting a steer where this is going. Anybody else want to? Councillor Scolding, thank you.
Yes, I'd be happy to go along with this one. The only thing I'd like would be to have the hammerhead actually hashed, so no one can be parking there and stopping anyone turning.
That won't make it. That won't make it. Yeah, that's a good idea, but we can't. As a planning committee, or officers can't do that. If there's anything like that, it's going to be highways, Rob. So it's a good idea. It's a relevant thing. So we're still in debate. Anybody else want to add to that? But a good suggestion, Councillor Scolding. Nobody else? No, debate's finished. Officers, would you like to come in there at all? No. So I'm looking for a proposer on this. Councillor Davis and Councillor Miss Scanlon.
Suppose we go with officer's recommendation and approve the application.
Yep. That's it. So just to reiterate from me, to go with officer's recommendation, approve the application proposed by Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Miss Scanlon. That's for the record. All those in favour of that, please put the hands up.
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you very much, members. That application has been approved. Okay. So I'll now hand over to David Rowan, the development manager here, to present application FYR 21 stroke 142-1/F, agenda item number 12. So David, would you like to?
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a full planning application for the formation of a car park and access to the erection of 2-metre high palisade fencing, gates and 10 3-metre high lighting columns at land north of Knowles Transport, Blue Lane, Wimblington. Just draw members' attention initially to the update report that's been circulated in respect to this item. And in addition, we have this morning received comments from Wimblington Parish Council, which I'll just verbally report to you. These state that the Parish Council objects to the lighting scheme, which causes concerns about the level of lighting and the impact on surrounding properties. Brightness levels of lighting immediately adjacent to Blue Lane itself need to be such that it does not impede on those properties immediately adjacent to the proposed entrance. There are concerns that this is a 24/7 car park immediately opposite properties with bedrooms front.
Okay.
So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It sits to the north of the existing Knowles Transport site in Wimblington. So that's the grey area immediately to the south of the red line. Blue Lane forms the eastern boundary of the site. And then there is a public footpath which runs along the southern boundary of the site, adjacent to the northern elevation of the Knowles site. So the proposed layout of the site is shown. The access is taken from Blue Lane with the Parking spaces then arranged around the site. There are 10 3-metre high lighting columns proposed, 5 within the middle of the site, and then 5 sort of stationed around the edges of the site. And there are also lights proposed to be installed to the northern wall of the adjacent building to illuminate the footpath link. The existing field access to Blue Lane is to be closed off. As just mentioned, a footpath link is to be provided in the southeast corner of the site from a point adjacent to the existing office building, sort of in the sort of kind of purple hatched area that's shown quite narrow on that plan, unfortunately. And then this footpath link would sort of cross the line of the existing public right of way. 2-metre fencing is to be provided to the boundary of the site, largely inside the existing boundary planting, and within the update report, members will see that there is a further condition regarding the provision of a fence to the eastern boundary, the Blue Lane boundary of the site. The hedge along the Blue Lane frontage of the site is also to be retained, and as the parish council have indicated, I would just draw members' attention to the dwellings on the opposite side of Blue Lane. So the left-hand photograph here shows the site as it is at present, with the Knowles building sort of to the left-hand side of that, adjacent to the southern boundary of the site. From historic aerial photos, it would appear that there was previously a building on the site, and it doesn't appear that the land was sort of actively farmed for some time, in terms of sort of having crops planted on it or anything of that nature. The right-hand image then shows the north elevation of that existing Knowles building and the public footpath running alongside this, with the application site, effectively kind of the other side of that hedge. The left-hand image here shows a view from the opposite side of Blue Lane at its junction with Ash Tree Close, looking towards the site and that current frontage. The right-hand image shows a view from a similar position looking up Blue Lane. As I say, that existing hedgerow is largely to be maintained, and any sort of existing access points within that are to be closed off, reinstated, and also to be replanted. It is considered that the development would impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents. However, this is not considered to be to such a level to justify the refusal of the application. There are no technical objections arising from environmental health or highways upon which a refusal could be sustained. It is not considered that the character of the area would be significantly adversely affected by the development, and there would be some economic benefits to the business from the development proceeding. Consequently, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission as set out within the agenda and also within the update report. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, David. We have one speaker on this application. I'd now like to invite Peter Humphreys, of course, he's the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. Again, you will have 5 minutes. Oh, goodness. You've thrown us here, haven't you? So, members, I'm sure you've disappointed many members, including Councillor Miss Scanlon then, but he's missed the trick. So, members, questions to officers then, please. Yeah, well, yeah, of course, members. Mr. Humps, I'm sure, would be delighted to take questions from members. No, I think members have indicated to me that they'd like to ask you questions, so I'm sure you'd oblige. I'm going to start with you, Councillor Sutton. Okay, then. Thank you.
Yeah, hello again, Mr. Humphreys, and welcome back. Just the one thing that concerns many of the residents living there is the noise. Has any consideration been given to an acoustic fence along the frontage?
It has had a email on Friday from the case officer. Unfortunately, Chris Walford was dealing with it, so I dealt with it in his absence. We said we're happy putting an acoustic fence on the boundary, which will stop the headlights into the neighbours and also reduce the noise. I did speak to Alex Knowles, who said he would be happy with that. So if that wants to go as a condition, Mr. Chairman, we are happy changing the weld mesh fencing on the perimeter to timber acoustic.
That's fine. Thank you for that bit.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was my question, because we did say about that on the site visit. And we think that's more appropriate because these people are going to be 24-hour operation, and they're going to be day and night with it.
We do like to accommodate councillors wherever possible, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, I just got one. I don't know what we can do about it, but I do like to encourage businesses to expand, and of course it does get some more employment in Fenland. So I'm really happy with that. But I'm also mindful of the residents down Coney Walk and Blue Lane. I'm happy with the acoustic fence and the tree planting, everything that goes with it. And I hope that gets done before anything else is used. But I am a little bit worried about the lighting in there. That will probably, to residents, that will be a nuisance. Is there anything you can do to alleviate my fears of their health and well-being?
There is, Councillor Connell. We have, I think this morning, actually sent an amended lighting layout to the planning officer. But we are, if you want to condition that and leave that with us to agree with the officers, we're happy to take that so that we don't have lights into the neighbours' properties.
Well, it will do, won't it? Because if we're having a 1.8 metre acoustic fence, okay.
We can have bollard lighting. So we have bollards with the lights at the top of them so that the staff can see to walk to their cars, and it won't be over the top of the fencing.
Yeah, I mean that's better than what's on in the pack at the moment, because it was a 3 metre high, and that will obviously flow all over. Will go down, won't it? The light will shine down, but it'll also shine outwards as well. So that has gone a long way of alleviating my fears, Mr. Humphrey. So thank you.
The only concern with that, Mr. Chairman, the police architectural officer doesn't like bollard lighting because it doesn't show up faces of people when they're walking. So there may have to be some compromise, but I'm sure if we can agree that we can resolve this with the officers, we will come up with an acceptable solution.
Yeah, but yes, absolutely, and I agree with you. But that needs to be acceptable to the residents as well. That's where I am. So yeah, well, that's gone some way. Thank you very much for that. So, Mr. Humphreys, Councillor French, then Councillor Miss Cannon. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Humphreys, there is a public right of way on the site.
Yes.
I'm assuming that you do know that if you're going to temporarily close that, you have to serve a TR traffic regulation order, which is a minimum of 12 weeks. So if you're planning,
we have left the right of way and respected that. So we've designed the footpath and the parking away from that.
Thank you.
We thought it would be more trouble than it was worth. So we've designed the car park.
It most certainly would have.
Very, very wise. Yeah, but yes, that is. I agree with Councillor Humphreys there. Mr. Humphreys there. It won't interfere with that at all. Councillor Miss Cannon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Totally concur with what Councillor Sutton and Councillor Murphy we discussed at the site and yourself about this. I'm glad to see that the agent is taking on board what we've discussed. The lighting, as Councillor Connor has said, was an issue because it's not only the light that comes down, it's what's wasted going up, which affects the wildlife, and it did at Meepole. So when you're installing the lighting, can you make sure that it's down lighting, not up lighting?
We had exactly this situation on Knowles Transport site at Lynn Road in Wisbech, and we had to get we had column lights, but we did have an extra cover on them so that you're right, it just covers the area and it doesn't spew into the neighbours.
Yeah,
it's a compromise of safety and getting lighting that covers enough
Yeah.
for the cars and the car park, but at the same time not affecting the neighbours. Hence, I think we can put proposals to the officers that comply with what your requirements are.
Yeah, I think that's great, because we did discuss on that, and we know there's a hedge along the side of the road, but for 3/4 of the year the lights can shine through. So I welcome the acoustic fence with light mitigation for the neighbours and the downlighting. Okay, thank you.
No, it's a big ask, and probably, but could we beef up the hedge or put some more little trees in there, or we want some larger trees in my view, where the hole is, where the gate is. We need some mature trees there, because obviously if they're small like that, obviously it won't. So we want some. I'd like to see some mature trees in there, and also probably just to beef up the hedgerow, just as a secondary thing.
If you want to put that as a condition, Mr. Chairman, I think when you ride by the site, you actually don't see the lorries on the car park because of the landscaping scheme we've done on the previous. So I know Mr. Knowles will be more than happy to put in a landscaping scheme that will mitigate and hide the traffic. But if you want to add it as a condition, that's not a problem.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. That's can't say fairer than that, can we? Right. And so I've taken up. Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Just for clarification, Mr. Humphrey, I wasn't suggesting you want acoustic all the way around. There's just acoustic across the front, so it's
Just the front.
those properties. Yeah.
Again, it's this compromise between an acoustic fence and the world mesh. The world mesh is more secure because you can see what's happening behind it. So we only really wanted to do the acoustic fence where the properties are. So, if we can make that clear, we don't want to come back and say we've not done what we said. Yes. The more world mesh we can have, the happier we will be, because people walking dogs and that can see anyone trying to break into cars, etc.
Mr. Chairman, so in this case, the cost is not going to be that much greater than the world mesh, because that green is quite expensive anyway. So, yeah, that was good.
Okay. Well done for answering those questions. Anybody else before we let Mr. Humphrey go? No, thank you very much. So, members, questions to officers? Right, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please
The
do.
question will be, are officers content with what the questions and the answers from Mr. Humphrey, and that we can come to those arrangements by condition.
What I was going to do, absolutely, you can bring it in there if you like, but I was going to mention that when we ask the officers after the debate, because some members might not really want that. So would you mind leaving it then, so we can get all that sorted out?
Sorry, through you, Chairman.
Okay.
I just wonder whether it might be better to actually get that out of the way now, because that
If you like.
may help to influence members' debate, perhaps.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy for that. I'm happy. Carry on, Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chairman. I think I got what Councillor Sutton was asking.
Right, okay.
I mean, essentially, the condition that's recommended as part of the update report relates to fencing purely along the Blue Lane boundary, so the eastern boundary. And I think the anticipation with that would be that it would be a solid fence, probably of an acoustic grade, mainly to prevent headlights, etc., shining through into the properties on Blue Lane. With regards to the wider lighting scheme, I must admit I'm not aware that another lighting plan has actually come in, and I would perhaps question whether that's necessary or not, given that we've got a lighting scheme here that Environmental Health are happy with. They're not raising any concerns about excessive illuminance or light overspill.
Could I interrupt at that point? And pick up on what David's just said? So I'm looking at the lighting plan, and that shows the light spill going into the houses opposite is less than 1 lux. And you've got to remember that a street light is 5 lux or more. So it's not an issue in terms of light trespass from this development onto the adjacent dwellings, because it's not even at street lighting level.
What we could asked Nick, and I appreciate, officers in EH have made that assessment and respect that assessment, but they don't have to live there. So we could have a mixed scheme whereby you have bollard lighting at the front of the site and then better lighting at the back. And that would, I think that would cure everybody's issues.
Sorry, again, through you, Chairman, the other point I was going to make in terms of the current lighting scheme, as well as environmental health being happy, is that the police designing out crime team are happy. I think, as Mr. Humphrey said in when answering questions, the designing out crime team are not overly keen on bollard lighting for the reason that it doesn't necessarily provide a great environment in terms of security. And I think particularly if you're talking about having bollard lighting at probably the most vulnerable part of the site, i.e. the frontage, I don't think that would necessarily find favour with them. I think the other thing to bear in mind, picking up Councillor Miscandlon's point, is that we've got the comments from the wildlife officer saying that he's essentially happy with the proposal as well. So in terms of the lighting scheme that's in front of you, environmental health are happy, designing out crime team are happy, and the wildlife officer is happy.
Yeah. And also health and well-being of residents. I think, yeah, all the parties are happy, but I think the residents have got to be taken into consideration. Obviously, they're not happy. I think there should be a compromise to be made there. And if Mr. Humphreys, in his infinite wisdom, has said bollard lights they would do, I just think it would alleviate that problem for residents. I'm just of that feeling. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What we have before committee is a lighting scheme which is acceptable to your technical experts. So the decision today is whether or not you want to approve it on the basis of the submitted lighting scheme, yes or no. If the answer's yes, you are happy to approve it, but there will be an ongoing bit of toing and froing between officers and the applicant to see if we can reduce the light levels even more, then so be it. But I think the decision for committee today is, are you happy to approve it as submitted, yes or no?
Okay, Councillor French, is this a question?
Yeah, I was
officers?
just going to elaborate on that. I mean, we are not technically minded. We're not here as experts, and it should be left up to the officers to deal with this. I think we've all got just obviously Mr. Noel is happy to put this additional stuff in. I mean, it's great to see a business expand.
Absolutely.
Employs over 300 people. You know, hats off to them. And I think we should leave it up to the officers and Mr. Humphreys to do the technical stuff.
Is this a question to officers?
No, just a statement.
But, okay, is yours a question to officers?
Statement.
Okay, then. So, no, any more questions to officers? Councillor Murphy, will let you in then, please.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether this is a slip of the tongue by David, but when he was talking about going back and saying about pence and that, he said possibly acoustic. Well, it's not possibly acoustic. We want it acoustic. He said possibly acoustic. I just picked that up.
On one side.
Yeah, I know, but he came back and said possibly acoustic. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's got to be.
It's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah, we can make that, as a planning committee, we can make that as a condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're happy with that? Right, any more questions? Oh, Councillor Cornwall.
Yes,
questions
Chairman,
to officers.
are the conditions going to include the elements of tree planting on the eastern side where the existing gap to the tip at the back is at the moment? Because that's completely open. There's no growth there at all at the moment.
Okay, question to officers. Could you please answer?
Through you, Chairman, there is a condition proposed regarding the reinstatement of the existing access points, and as part of that, I would anticipate that the sort of the hedge planting would come in as part of the condition. However, I think as Mr. Humphrey has indicated, then if members wish to put on a wider landscaping condition across the site, which would effectively, I suppose, reinforce that element, then that's in members' gift if they're minded to grant the application.
Sorry? I shall. I'm sure you wouldn't let it slip your grasp there, Councillor Cornwall. Right. Now, any more questions for officers before I close that? Because we're going to go into debate extremely quickly. Right, in debate, please. Councillor Murphy.
Well, I don't know whether we're on the debate, and I think
We are on the debate.
Yes, I know we've debated it very well as
Yeah.
now, but I suggest that we agree and go ahead with the approval of this.
Okay. Well, we've got just let anybody else if they want to speak. Councillor Cannon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. Humphrey has quite rightly answered the questions and concerns of the committee members that went on site and those that visited by their own accord. And he accepts that there are, and there's going to have to be compromises on the lighting, the acoustic fence, and I think he's quite happy. And I agree, the police don't like bollard lighting because it's detrimental to the security. But there are infrared cameras that they can have that read in the dark. So I think that's something that Knowles may want to look at for the future for the security of the site. It's quite common on sites nowadays, but the lighting has to be agreed. And I think it's going to be I'm not going to use the word hodgepodge. It's going to have to be a mixture of different lighting systems within the site. I think Mr. Humphrey and Mr. Knowles appreciate that, and I think they will act accordingly.
Okay. Any more to the debate at all? Councillor Sutton?
Yeah, there's already a tree hedge planting scheme down the western side, I would think. The long side anyway. So all that needs to be done is to be carried on around the front. You know, it's fairly simple. And then the acoustic fencing along the front, and that should, you know, allay any fears that residents have got, Chairman. And as long as you know that's taken on board with the possible bollard lighting, you know, in row one, I would be more than happy to support it.
Just to beef what you're saying, just to beef up the hedgerows and yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'll take Councillor Miss Cannon, then Councillor Cornwall. We're still in debate, of course.
Yeah, one of the things that this is obviously going to be a big project for Knowles, but I'd like to see a construction plan that doesn't disturb the neighbours while this is taking place. Because there's got to be a lot of work on that. So when we visited the site, it was semi-derelict, for want of a better term, and that's all got to be moved off the site. And I'd hated sort of 24/7 shoveling stuff into the back of lorries to get rid of it. And I'd like to see a construction plan for the benefit of the neighbouring properties. And I'm sure Mr. Humphrey will take that back to Mr. Knowles to say, look, you can't do it 24/7. Because I know his business operates 24/7 and it might be convenient for him to do it, but not for the neighbours.
Thank you. That's a very good point, Councillor Miss Cannon. Councillor French.
Well, I do agree with construction plan, but unfortunately construction plans have got to be monitored and adhered to. As you well know, we visited Wisbeach Road a few weeks ago when County Council were cleaning out the gullies that was left by the mess of the applicant 118 affordable homes are building. They've got a construction plan. They don't clean the roads, which they're supposed to. The dirt and muck is going down the drains, and we're going to end up getting flooded out again. So the construction plans are great, but somebody has got to make sure that they're actually adhering to them. And we've got the same at Berriesfield as well. You know, we've visited that site as well.
And also I can go further than that on the A605. The guys have cleaned the road up. I know I'm digressing, but I'm going on the same line as you. Now the county council highways have got to go and do all those drains again. So you're absolutely right, at a cost to us taxpayers. So you're absolutely right. I know we've digressed a bit, but I think it's a very, very, very valid point. So, right. All finished in the debate, or anybody else want to add to anything to it while they can? No? You're all happy? Right. Officers? Oh, sorry. Have another bite, councillor Cornwall.
It's not another bite. It's actually, a comment
Another comment,
on the discussion. I put my hand up and you said I was following Councillor Scanlon, but there we are.
Sorry, I apologise.
I forget it. Right, can I just point out, we're on about safety and so on. We are talking about a private car park here. We're not talking about a public car park. And at the end of the day, the applicant has a duty of care under various provisions and so on to his employees and so on. And sometimes that may not quite gel with some of the things that other people want. We have to accept that. So if the police want something and the employer says, no, sorry, it's my area, I'm going to do that, he's going to do it. And unless they're conditioned, he's got no, he has that freedom to do that. So just point that out.
No, very valid point, councillor Cornwall. We always like to hear your comments. They're very valid. Right. No more debate on this, of course. So, officers, would you like to sum it all up, please? If you can. And where would you like to start?
Well, if through you, Chair, I'll start with perhaps the simple one, just to pick up on Councillor Scanlon's point. Condition 11 does relate to a construction management plan. Details of that have already been submitted, and that does set out the hours of operation within it.
Chairman, through you,
absolutely.
Could you just read out what you see as the conditions that we want to add, David, please?
Through you, Chairman, I'm not necessarily sure it's for me to read out the conditions that members may want to put on. I've got down that, or from the debate and from my notes, I think members are looking at having a landscaping condition put on.
Yep.
And I think you're looking at probably just reinforcing the condition that's included within the update report to mention specifically acoustic fence.
Yeah.
And then I think you're also potentially looking at a condition along the lines of notwithstanding the submitted details, a lighting scheme to be submitted and agreed.
Yeah, I would still like, even though the police are not that keen on it, I would still like those bollards, because I still think it will affect the residents' well-being. So I urge that to happen, really. It may not get support but on that condition, but I really do feel for residents on that one. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask the officers to deal with this? We've sat here
We
for half
have,
an hour
but as
discussing all the
councillor Cornwall
conditions.
says, if we don't make it a condition.
Yeah, I understand that, but we'd already said repeatedly about the lights.
I know, but I'm that absolutely, I'm really adamant.
I don't think for 1 minute Mr. Knowles will not adhere to these conditions.
I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he's a really good guy and a good employee, but we've also got to think not only of him, we've got to think of the residents as well. That is what we do. That's what we did down Berryfields. We thought we went and saw the residents, didn't we? That's it. So that nullifies possibly that argument, doesn't it? Right. So anybody else got
Move the recommendation,
right,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay. Rightio. Looking for a poser on it now. Yeah, you did. Right. Reiterate it then, please. Yep. Right. Okay. Who's going to second that?
Me.
You, right. So we've got a proposal goes off as a recommendation to approve this. Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor French. Let's have a vote on that. Thank you.
It's a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
Councillor Mrs Davis did not take part.
No, that application's been approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make comment on the amount of time we've sat here. You know, we shouldn't be complaining about that. That's what we're here for. And if that's what the time takes, that's what the time takes.
Absolutely. I just do not feel you're absolutely correct in your thoughts. We need to make it absolutely clear as a planning committee what we expect.
Can I just clarify? I wasn't complaining about
Oh,
the
you weren't
time,
complaining,
but
no.
we'd gone round the houses about half a dozen
Oh,
times on
yeah.
this lights and
Yeah,
fencing.
well, I just want to be satisfied in my own opinion that it's right, but we can move on now, can't we? Okay, so now, I now hand over to David Rowan to present application F/YR 22-09660, agenda item number 13. So David, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an outline application for the erection of up to 2 dwellings and the formation of an access. It's an outline application with matters committed in respect of access only. The location is land north of Windy Willows, Church Lane, Tid St Giles. So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It's in a green field with location with sporadic development in the vicinity. There have been 2 previous applications refused for 3 dwellings on the site, the most recent of these being at Planning Committee in 2013. The slide on the screen just shows the application site in its wider context. As you can see, the west side of Church Lane is largely undeveloped, whilst there is a loose-knit linear form of development to the east side. The site, I think, from this image is clearly well separated from the main built form of the settlement. An existing site plan is shown on the screen, and the indicative plan shown, or the indicative plan submitted is now also shown. Say access is committed, and this is shown as being a single point roughly in the middle of the site frontage, to be then shared by the 2 dwellings. However, these details are illustrative only. So the photographs on the screen now, the left-hand image shows the existing site frontage and access point, while the right-hand image shows a view from the kind of access track running to the south of the site, looking north across the application site. And I think you can see clearly the current character of this is undeveloped grassland. To summarise, the site is considered to be outside the built form of Tid St Giles and as such is within the open countryside. Tid St Giles itself is classed as a small village within the settlement hierarchy of the local plan, where only small scale infilling will be allowed. The development by its nature and the nature of the site does not accord, therefore, with the relevant planning policies in this regard in terms of the principle of development. Given the nature of the site and its separation from the built form of the settlement, it's considered that there would also be harm caused to the character and appearance of the surrounding area. The site is located in flood zone 3 and as such should be demonstrated as being sequentially acceptable. No sequential test or no meaningful sequential test has been submitted with the application, and as such the application fails to meet local and national policies in this respect. In addition, the Highway Authority have commented that no details of acceptable visibility have been shown on the plan and therefore raised an issue in that regard, and there is a further reason for refusal recommended. As such, the application is considered to conflict with a number of policies of the local plan and of the MPPF, and the recommendation is therefore to refuse planning permission as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, David. We have 1 speaker on this application, and I'd like to invite Shana Jackson, of course, she's the agent again, to make her presentation to the committee. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, of course, Shana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you just heard, this proposes for 2 dwellings and is submitted an outline with matters of access committed only. And it's before you with 16 letters of support. The scheme has been recommended for refusal for reasons which include principle, visual impact, flood risk and highway safety. And taking each issue in turn, I'll respond as follows. With regard to the principle of development, national and local housing policies direct new housing to locations amongst existing housing and within existing settlements. As you'll be aware, there is a dwelling to the immediate south of the site and there's continuous residential development opposite. Whilst the proposal doesn't strictly adhere to the infill definition as set out in policy LP3, it is within the spirit of that policy as it constitutes new housing, which is amongst other residential development. The site is also immediately opposite an existing footpath which links the land to the village centre by foot. Future residents will therefore be able to walk to local amenities, including the pub and the primary school, and as such will be part of the local community. And this is very much within the spirit of what national and local housing policies require. Set against the backdrop of the existing dwelling to the south and the continuous frontage development opposite, we would argue that there would be no visual harm caused by the proposal in principle, as the site is already within a residential location. The specific design details of the development would be secured at reserved matter stage. With regards to flood risk, no objections have been received by the Environment Agency, which demonstrates that the scheme is technically safe from flooding. The sequential test is passed on the basis that the village of Tid St Giles applies. However, there's a difference in opinion given that officers consider that the whole of the district applies. In the event that it is considered that the sequential test is passed, the proposal contains the necessary credentials to pass the exception test. And the final reason for refusal relates to highways. However, no objections have been received by the local highway authority. The site is positioned along a long straight road and visibility space of 2.4 by 120 metres can be achieved in either direction, as well as sufficient space within the site to allow for turning. As such, we consider that the proposal is acceptable in highway safety terms. The proposal would bring new housing to the village of Tid St Giles, which has been acknowledged as an aspiration of the parish council in their recent comments relating to the emerging local plan. We consider that the proposal is an appropriate form of development, and we hope you're able to grant planning permission accordingly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite members to put questions or some clarifications to Ms Jackson. Anybody got any at all? No? Thank you very much for that. Questions, members to officers? No. Right. With that, then I'm asking to open the debate on the said application. Anybody want to kick that off? Councillor Cornwall.
Well, there's no development at all on that side, is there? On the approach into the village and so on, from the main drain into the village, there's nothing on that side, I understand, until the actual road on the left-hand side. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is a new plot in an open area.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cornwall. Anybody else want to add to this debate? No. Okay. Debate's now closed. Officers, would you like to say anything at all?
No, thank you.
Okay. Members, I'm looking for a proposal on the application, please. Councillor Miss Scanlon.
Go with officer's recommendation.
Okay. Okay. Have we got a second of that proposal? Councillor Cornwall, thank you. So we've got a proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse the application proposed by Councillor Scanlon, second by Councillor Cornwall. Can we have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
Unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you. The application has been refused. So I'll with further ado, I'll hand over to David Rowan to present application FYR 22/1123. It's a PIP application, agenda item number 14. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for permission in principle for the erection of up to 9 dwellings involving the formation of 9 new accesses at land east of Chardor, Needham Bank, Friday Bridge. So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and on the aerial photo. Forms part of a wider agricultural field sitting to the north side of Needham Bank. There is an isolated dwelling which sits to the northeast of the site, albeit not directly abutting this. And then there is, as you can see, linear residential development immediately to the southwest, with largely open land immediately opposite the site. A wider aerial view of the site and the vicinity is shown to provide perhaps greater context. So the dwellings situated immediately to the southwest of the site are themselves then separated from the main built form of the settlement by a gap of approximately 120 metres. And then in terms of the property to the northeast of the site, there is a further gap beyond this to the nearest neighbouring property as well. I think it's fair to say that the application site is clearly within an area of largely open character. Whilst not a requirement of a permission in principle application, an indicative layout plan has been submitted with the application. Moving on to the photos of the site, so 2 images from street view. So the left-hand photo shows the view looking northeast along Needham Bank with the application site on the left. This illustrates the open character of the site and also the wider area with the largely open space on the opposite side of the road. The right-hand image then shows the return view looking southwest with the application site on the right-hand side. So to summarise, only 3 matters can be considered when determining a PIP application, which are location, use and amount. It is considered that the development is outside the course, shape and form of Friday Bridge, and that the principle of the development of the site for residential purposes would have a detrimental impact upon the open and rural character of the area. As such, the development would be unacceptable in terms of its location and use, and therefore contrary to the relevant policies of the local plan. And as such, the recommendation is one of refusal as set out within the agenda. Thank you,
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you once again, David. We have 1 speaker on this application. I'd like to invite Peter Humphreys. Of course, again, he's the agent to make his presentation to committee. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got an overhead I'd like to just refer you to. It does put it in context. It's a bit of a game when officers put a photograph up and when we put one up. You can use the as much as you want. What we've done here, Mr. Chairman, the white triangles show the developed frontage. You'll also see the only other gap on the southern boundary. It says FDC draft local plan. There's an allocation for the other open space for 6 dwellings. And then going along, it shows our application. To me, this is probably one of the what should have been the simplest, easiest PIP applications we put in. It is only for frontage, and it is the very similar format to the rest of the village. That I don't think we can argue with. Yes, there is an estate within the square to the top left, but generally Friday Bridge is frontage. Also, Mr. Chairman, quite a significant fact, being frontage makes the development more sustainable. Why have a backland development where you have to put a new road in with all the amenities when you've got an existing frontage? Also, the site is within a flood zone 1. I love flood zone 1s, Mr. Chairman. There are 16 dwellings after this site. So our site is shown in red. As you follow along Needham Bank, there are another 16 dwellings before you get to the Stitch. There is already a footpath up to Laddice Drove. Laddice Drove being to the south of Needham Bank. It's almost opposite the end of our site. Laddice Drove it's hidden by trees, but it goes off to the south. Excuse me. So we could we'd be happy to extend any footpaths to make it safer for everyone in the village, not just our site. We can have a footpath along our site frontage. Also, looking at the map, you can see the proximity of our site to the, we've made assumed village centre, which we've got the school, the pub and the shop. Again, our site is so much closer than the Stitch and probably 50% of the village, and yet officers don't agree that it is in the right location. Notably, the draft local plan proposes to infill the only gap, which is what I've showed, and it also proposes 230 dwellings for a limited infill village. Hence, it makes this application of 9 dwellings more logical. As I said on one of my previous speeches, there is a shortage of plots for people to build their own properties. Planning officer says it's there's not a shortage on self-build plots, or there's a difference between your self-build, custom-build register and plots that people want to buy and build their own. This is a classic site where we could carve them up. the lady who owns them, Mrs. Bullard, is retiring from farming, wants to capitalise on what she's got, and I've suggested that these as 9 self-build plots would certainly fly off the shelf, because again, we know the number of people that come in and ask us if we've got plots that are available. I would therefore ask that members give this their serious consideration and support the scheme we've got in front of you for a PIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humphries. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Humphries? No, thank you very much, Mr. Humphries. Members, questions, clarifications to officers? No. Right, okay. So I'm asking now members to debate the application. Councillor French.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to point out, this is part of my county council division, but it is Councillor Sutton's district ward. I don't know it quite as well as he does, but I'm just looking at what Councillor Sutton has stated there. The adjacents to build form, so our policy compliant both locally and nationally. Under the local plan, Friday Bridge is a limited growth village where it's expected to deliver 10% of total dwellings during the lifetime of the plan. 58 dwellings currently has only delivered 35, where most villages, including are way over the 10%, with a shortfall of 23, and generally linear development. It would appear that this type of proposal is the only option for Friday Bridge to take its share of development. I totally agree with that. And as Mr. Humphries just said a few minutes ago, which I'm delighted to hear, because I love footpaths, I certainly want to support this application, because not only it will help the linear development of his own site, but help the rest of the village.
Okay. Yep. Very pertinent points, Councillor French. Anybody else want to add to the debate? Sorry, Councillor Davis. Thank you.
No, just picking up on Councillor French's point, the 10% isn't something that has to be met. It says that it can be, yeah.
Okay. Would you like to come in, Nick, please?
If I may, so the agent referred to the application being for self-build homes. Again, that wasn't mentioned in the application that was submitted to us. And I won't repeat the answer I gave to Councillor Cornwell's question earlier on today, as you know what the answer is. And then in relation to the drawing that the agent showed you, he only showed you some of the allocations which are proposed within the village, i.e. only the road frontage ones. There are other allocations proposed in the emerging local plan. And you know, there's nothing to suggest that 2 of those sites couldn't come forward under the auspices of our current plan policy. And given that we've got those sites being put forward to us by the landowner, there's no reason why those wouldn't come forward in the fullness of time.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I'll just take Councillor French, because she's going to come back on that. Then Councillor Miss Scanlon. Sorry.
Thank you. If I may, I mean, the whole purpose of a planning committee is to actually listen what's in front of us and for any new information. And that's why we obviously are not predetermined until we hear different new information coming forward. I understand what David and Nick are saying, but this is new information. Obviously, the agent will have to discuss with the officers whether it's self-build or whatever build it is. But still stand by, as I say, Friday Bridge is a village, and I certainly will support it.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor French. Councillor Miss Scanlon, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Another incomplete application. Yeah, another incomplete application, bringing forward information at the last minute that the committee wasn't aware of. I've sat here for a number of years and listened to these incomplete applications. I think it's incumbent on the agents to speak to the officers with as much information as possible. All right, there's always going to be a last minute hitch, which we know, but suddenly it's self-build, not stated in the application. And I can understand the officers Frustration in suddenly been, well, they're self-build. It's a last minute statement, an incomplete application. I get rather annoyed with them when they come forward.
Yeah, I think so do we all, councillor. Ms Cannon. Anybody else want to add to this debate? You're deliberating, councillor Cornwall, I can see. Go
Yes,
on.
I am.
Go for it.
I mean, I think that there's been things discussed since presentation and so presentations that actually have perhaps skewed my thinking a little bit. And yeah, I agree. It would be good to have had some of those points raised before we got here. But sorry, or at least within the reports and so on. But I'm still undecided.
Still in debate, councillor Davis, please.
Yeah, I think we also need to pay attention to what Elm Parish Council has said. I mean, we always try to listen to parish councils, and I think their point that on a 60-mile-an-hour stretch, to have 9 more access points put in with 2 or 3 vehicles, maybe even 4 vehicles, because these are going to be fairly large houses. That's quite a lot of traffic increase coming in and out.
Okay, still in debate, trying to get somebody to continue this. Have we all finished? Councillor Cornwall, thank you.
Yeah, and we are looking at this as permission in principle, aren't we, rather than any that. So I mean, presumably, like points like that with sort of so many accesses and so on, you know, yeah, I don't think anyone would want to see all those, to be perfectly honest with you. Down there, it's a bit of a fast road actually, in spite of the fact there's a limit on it. I do go down there quite a bit. Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure.
We're just to remind members, we're just, and I know you know, but we're just looking at land use. Councillor French.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as you're well aware, it's now time again each year that we look at local highway improvements. Elm Parish Council can apply for that speed reduction to be removed, to be dropped down. So that is an avenue. And as you're aware, as a county councillor, we are reducing speed limits all over. We're not going to go as far as what they're doing in Cambridge and reduce them all to 20. But certainly there is a way forward for this. And as I said before, this gives a footpath. And again, a footpath would come under local highway improvements, but the parishes are only allowed 1, unlike the towns. So this is a prime opportunity to actually give something to the village.
Okay, you're absolutely right what you say. You're right. Okay. Would you like to sum up? Or
yeah, thank you through you, Chairman. I think just to perhaps clarify the issue that the parish council have raised, in that the speed limit on this part of Needham Bank appears to be 40 miles an hour rather than 60. Yeah, so the actual change from 30 to 40 is just to the kind of the west of the site. PIPs are strange applications because the government guidance on them is that you can't grant a PIP subject to a Section 106 application, and you also can't grant a PIP subject to any conditions. So if members were minded to be giving weight to the self-build elements, or indeed even giving weight to the provision of a footpath, and just on the footpath issue, certainly by the looks of it, the 2 houses immediately to the west of the application site don't have footpaths along their frontage. So I'm not sure what purpose a footway along the application site would necessarily achieve. But that's a sort of a side issue. Effectively, if members are minded to grant permission in principle, you're granting permission in principle with no conditions, no Section 106 agreement. So those issues aren't something that you can secure at this point.
Councillor French, it's a question to officers, obviously.
So with the PIPs application, if it was approved, but surely when it comes back to full application, the conditions can be put in.
I think, at that point.
Must be some way to
if-
put conditions in.
If the PIP is granted, there's then a technical consent stage where the application would come in. I think the difficulty would be that if you've granted the permission in principle, and then, for example, the issue of a footway didn't come in with the technical consent stage, or the application wasn't proposed as being self-built housing, then those sorts of issues would perhaps be somewhat difficult to kind of secure at the technical consent stage.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think that would be a very, very dangerous game for any agent to play with us.
Yeah. Oh, Councillor Murphy, thank you.
I just asked the officers, I personally don't like PIP at all, because I think it's a way of getting a planning application in without giving us a planning application. And I really do think it's creeping in more and more, and I think really somewhere along the line it ought to be stopped. We either sit here and we do a planning application, or we don't do a planning application. I don't mind which one it is. It's either or. But to do this, I think is terrible, because there are so many things we can't do afterwards. Once we've got this PIP and we say it's going to go through, this PIP is going to go through, we are stuck, and we're totally stuck after that, because all the things that come in there that we want to stop, we cannot stop. And people always say, you can do this, you can do that. I've noticed it before. On PIP, we can't do anything. We've actually given them permission to build, and that's what I don't like about PIP at all.
Yeah, okay, that's a fair comment. We seem to be getting more of them. We seem to be getting one most months now, don't we? Right, questions to officers? No, not at all. That's it. Right, that's none. So I'm looking for a proposal on this application. Councillor French. Okay. Okay. Have we got a second of the Councillor French's? Councillor Scolding. Okay. So we've got to go against officer recommendation, a proposal to go against officer recommendation to approve this application, proposed by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Scolding. We'll go for a vote on that proposal, please.
That's 3 votes, Chairman.
Those against?
That's 5.
Okay, so that application has failed. That proposal has failed. So I'm looking for another proposal, please, from someone. Councillor Miss Scanlon.
Go with officer's recommendation.
Okay. Have we got a second for that? Councillor Cornwall. So we've got another proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse this from Councillor Miss Scanlon, proposed by Councillor Miss Scanlon, seconded by Councillor Cornwall. Could we have a raised show of hands on that proposal, please?
That's 5 votes, Chairman.
Yep, so that application has been refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a planning application in principle for residential development of up to 4 dwellings involving the formation of 4 new accesses, land west of railway carriage, Needham Bank, Friday Bridge. The application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo, forms part of a wider agricultural field at the junction of Needham Bank, and then Bardrove is to the west. To the east is the residential property of railway carriage, and a significant proportion of the site is within flood zone 2. And provided a wider aerial view to show the site in sort of further context, while the core form of Friday Bridge is to the southwest. It's considered there is a clearly defined edge to this formed by Bardrove with open countryside beyond, within which is the application site, and clearly as well to the east of the adjacent property railway carriage, there's obviously a considerable gap to any next property. Again, whilst not required as part of a PIP application, an indicative plan has been submitted. And then just to provide context on the issue of flood zone 2, this is illustrated in the light blue and clearly shows a significant amount of the site being covered by this. The left-hand photo here is taken from the house on the corner of Bar Drove and Needham Bank, looking north towards the site. Hopefully there's the de-restriction sign to solve any debate about speed limits. The clear open character of this area is evident, I think, from this photo. The right-hand image shows the reverse view, and again you can see the clearly sort of defined edge to the settlement. So, as with the preceding application, only 3 matters can be considered when determining a PIP application: location, use and amount. It is considered that the development is outside the course, shape and form of Friday Bridge, and that the principle of the development of the site for residential purposes would have a detrimental impact upon the open and rural character of the area. In addition, a significant proportion of the site is within flood zone 2, with planning policies requiring development to be located within areas at the lowest risk of flooding. No sequential test has been undertaken, and as such, the development has not been shown to be sequentially acceptable as required by both local and national policy. As such, the development would be unacceptable in terms of location and use, and therefore contrary to the relevant policies of the local plan. The recommendation is therefore to refuse as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you once again, David. We have the same speaker on this application, Mr. Peter Humphrey. Would you like to come and make your presentation to me? Again, of course, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got an overhead on this one as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, absolutely fine.
If I can just explain the benefit of PIP applications as far as we're concerned. I know Councillor Murphy's not keen on them, but they are better than a pre-app. We get a formal recommendation and we don't have to spend thousands of our clients' money to find out whether it's worth putting an application in or not. So, and they're very quick. Compliments to the planning officers, they are turned around with quick decisions. So from our perspective, we do like PIPs, and it's gone back to the olden days where you had a red line around a piece of land and the planning department would give you a decision in outline, but it's now called a PIP. So again, we have my frontage development plan, and you'll see the site, continuous built frontage. And there is a house beyond our site, which acts as a stop. So I fail to see how the planning officers say it's not continuous built up frontage. It's natural infill. It's also very close to the developed executive homes on Bar Drove. So as you look at Bar Drove, that's the development furthest north, adjacent to our site in red, where there's just one side frontage. They're already big houses. And again, if I can clarify, I don't mean to change my description when I say self-build in the sense that the planning officers mean. What we are trying to deliver are plots that individuals do want to come along. We don't want them labelled as self-build. We want to have more market plots. And we know we're in an area where people do like to build their own houses. I would class this as a village gateway site. A village gateway site, there are 230 houses proposed in the draft local plan, and here we can offer 4 plots. The plots will help employment during construction, and we will be offering as plots for the public, as I've already explained. So I would therefore, Mr. Chairman, seek your approval for this one and make it so I haven't had quite such a bad day. Thank you.
Do I hear some laughter in the, anyway, never mind. We'll move on. Questions, clarifications to Mr. Humphrey, please, members? It's not such a bad day. You're not going to be grilled again, are you? Sorry, Councillor French. Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
Mr Humphries, are we getting a footpath?
No. Can't do it on a pip.
Okay, very good. Any more questions for Mr. Humphries? No? Okay, thank you. Questions to officers, members? No? Debate the application, members? Councillor Cornwall, thank you.
Well, I'll kick off and say that I really do think this is intrusion into the open countryside, to be quite honest. I mean, I think we have a built form that finishes at the road junction to the, what is it, southeast? No, southwest, isn't it? I think the fact that there's one of these very isolated fentite settlements just beyond it, and that this is a piece of infill between the two, I think doesn't bear water as far as I'm concerned. That is a development that's going out into the open countryside and extending the village when there would appear to be plenty of building opportunities at some stage anyway, somewhere within the existing scene built structure of the village.
Anybody want to add to the debate? Councillor Cornwall's kicked it off nicely. No, I'm looking. No, right, that's the debate. We're going to cease there. Now, officers, have you got nothing to add at all? Right, moving on quickly then, I need a proposal, please, on the application. Councillor Davis, thank you.
Go with officer's recommendation and refuse.
Okay. You're so seconding, Councillor Cornwall, yeah? Okay, so we've got a proposal from Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Cornwall. We go with officer recommendation to refuse this said application. Could we have a show of hands on that, please?
That's 7 votes, Chairman.
Against, we'll just say against. No, so the application obviously has been refused. Thank you. Right. So now with that, I'll hand over to David Rowan again to present application. It's TP 003/2022, agenda item number 18. So David, 16, sorry. David, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this is a request for committee to confirm a proposed tree preservation order on land adjacent to Fenland Cemetery, Church Road, Leverington. So the site in question is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It sits at the junction of Church Road and Gorefield Road in Leverington, just to the south of the church. From the photo on screen, it can be seen that this is quite a heavily treed area. The site is shown here in the context of the conservation area, which is the sort of, I was going to say red area, but it's more pink on the screen, and also the adjacent listed buildings. And also on this plan, you can see there are a number of individual points which denote existing tree preservation orders. So the plan on screen shows the trees proposed to be removed under the previously submitted applications, both for works to trees in the conservation area and also works to TPO'd trees. Unfortunately, again, it's not come through very well on the screen, but there are trees actually shown in red on there, mainly kind of the grouping in the centre, sort of just to the left of the one that's marked T10. Okay. So moving on to the photos on the screen, these show various views of the trees adjacent to the church and in the sort of the wider area around the cemetery. I think the cumulative contribution that these make to the amenity of the area. So to summarise, an application for works to trees in a conservation area was submitted earlier this year, which applied for consent for the felling of several trees. To safeguard those trees, given the time limited nature of an application for works to trees in the conservation area, an emergency tree preservation order was placed on the trees to prevent any works taking place. The council's arboricultural officer has subsequently advised that the works to several of the trees are unjustified, that the trees in question contribute to the amenity of the area and are worthy of a TPO being made, and also that if any trees to be removed should also be replaced. An objection to the tree preservation order has been received from the agent for the application for the works to trees in a conservation area, on the basis that further protected trees would hinder the wider management of trees within the site. As you will have seen from the sort of history section within the report, there have been several applications for works to protected trees in the vicinity, which have been granted in the last few years. But because those trees are actually protected by virtue of tree preservation orders, they've actually been able to require replacement trees to be planted. It's therefore recommended that committee confirm the proposed tree preservation order. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you once again, David. We have no speakers on this application. I'd like to invite members to put questions to officers. Any questions? Councillor French.
Well, it's not a question, statement really. I'm glad that this emergency TPO was put on in September. We need to be preserving trees. I certainly know in March in West End, coming in, they're chopping trees down without permission, and some of these trees are hundreds of years old. So I do welcome this.
Okay. It's to officers, Councillor Scanlon, absolutely, please do.
Yeah, when we viewed it on the screen, the red didn't come through very well. So can we look at the technical side of actually producing something that the public can see on the screen? I know we've got them on our laptops, but we need to have something that can actually produce onto the screen that the public can see if they're sitting here watching the event.
Very difficult, I think.
Yeah, through you, Chairman, it's simply down to the performance of the projector is the issue.
I think
in terms of the viewers on YouTube, they can always go to our website to look at the published committee report as you have done. I appreciate that's not fantastic, but there is a route there and to give the tree pun.
I noticed the technical person is laughing his head off at the suggestion that they made. Yeah, the projector. I think we could look at it, or they could look at it sometimes to try to get better images on the screen.
Okay, that's a good point, but we are where we are, as Councillor Sutton always says. Right, any more questions for officers? Debate the application, please.
I recommend we go ahead with the officer's recommendation.
Anybody else got anything to say before I take that? Yep. Okay, you've got something to say, or you're
Only that I think Councillor Scanlon's right. It's a bit of a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
right? You haven't got any more to say, have you? I can see it in your minds, so they're reading those. So a proposer from Councillor Miss Scanlon to go with officer recommendation, seconded by Councillor Davies. Can we have a last show of hands to go with that? So that applicant, so we are obviously allowing council to do what they need to do. So and approve the application. So thank you very much. So that is it for today. Just like to thank everybody for attending. This concludes today's meeting. May I take this opportunity to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you so much, everybody.